Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-anbiya wal mursaleen, Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. So, welcome to tonight's da'wah training. Now, a few preliminary notes before I jump right into it. First, we must understand that this is a da'wah training course. And what that means is that I'm not going to be sitting here for the next 2 hours and just talking away while you absorb all of what I'm saying by osmosis, and tomorrow you go out and you make da'wah and 10 shahadas. It doesn't work like that. So, Brother Mus'ab, he mentioned that it's going to be interactive. So for those of you who are sitting down and you're relaxed, realize your state will change as we go through the course. Okay, so I'm just giving you forewarning, and that includes the sisters. Because if the sisters are going out, then they obviously need to know how to engage as well. So if you're expecting just a Friday night, family night lecture or something like that, you're in the wrong spot, okay? That being said, what are we going to be talking about tonight? What we're going to be talking about tonight are effective means by which you can call people to Islam. And our focus is going to be street da'wah. Now, why is our focus street da'wah? It's because this original presentation is about 5 hours long. And I'm going to have to cram everything into hour and a half, 2 hours. We'll see how you guys are doing by then, right? So we're going to be focusing on what Mus'ab mentioned earlier on, that we go out to the streets, we call people proactively to Islam. How do you engage? How do you start a conversation? What happens when you get hit with a question, okay? Now, before we get to the practice, let's understand what we mean by da'wah. Now, this might be just refresher for all of you, but very quickly, the word da'wah comes from tad'u, which means to call or to invite someone. Specifically in this course, we're going to be focusing on non-Muslims, because you can make da'wah to Muslims as well, okay? Now, if you want to thinking about the word itself, tad'u, right? Da'wah itself, it has built within it certain characteristics that you need to embody. Okay, so the word da'wah, it means to invite. How do you invite someone? Do you argue with them incessantly, right? When you're calling someone over to your house, are you going to basically invite them over and then be like, let me tell you 5,000 reasons why you're wrong? No, the invitation is something that has within it an aspect of mercy, that you're bringing someone over, you're feeding them, you're speaking to them in a way that is kind and gentle. And so right from the beginning, the word itself is telling us that this is an invitation. You are mercifully inviting people to the truth. Okay? All right. Real quick, why should you make da'wah? Okay, as if today was not a good enough reason when you were watching the news and now you see, well, a lot of people really need to know more about Islam. Okay? But just to augment that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَعْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. And let there be arising from amongst you a nation inviting to all that is good and joining what is right and forbidding what is wrong. Okay. When Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that let there arise from amongst you a group that is calling to al-khair, the scholars mention that al-khair here is referring to Allah. Why? Because Allah is the source of all khair, all good. But notice, يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. How many people speak Arabic here? Raise your hand. Okay, good. The term ma'ruf. Now, what is the difference between khair and ma'ruf? Right? So sometimes they're both translated as good. What's the difference? Someone help me out. What's the difference? Shaykh.
Well, the ma'ruf is like it's different from khair. It's something you can give.
Okay, but ma'ruf is not something you can give.
No, ma'ruf is like I'm doing you a favor.
Doing you a favor.
Like doing you a favor.
Okay. So let me kind of break it down linguistically a little bit, right? Ma'ruf, the trilateral root for those of you studying Arabic is arafa. Arafa, to know something, right? Ma'ruf is that good that is known around you. Now the reason I'm highlighting this is because if you think about it, when we think about calling non-Muslims to Islam, we assume that we're giving them something foreign. That you're going to come to them and there's some sort of Eastern religion that you're bringing them, this is Islam, and you feel a little awkward. But understand that what you're ordering them for, what you're asking them to do is ma'ruf. It's known to them. It's deep inside of them. Because what? Because you're calling them to Allah, which is built inside of them, and worshiping Allah alone, which is also built inside of them.
That's a big favor, right?
That is a big favor, yes. That is the biggest favor you could possibly do. Okay. قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ. Say, O Muhammad, this is my way, I call to Allah upon ala basira, upon certain knowledge. Real quick, my Arab-speaking brothers, what is the difference between basira and basar?
Basira is the palm.
Is the heart, exactly. You know what's interesting is basar, when we say basar, you're talking about vision, actual sight, right? So you have something in your perception that you see. But basira is seeing with the heart. And this will be very important when we move forward in terms of da'wah techniques. Because what happens is, sometimes our da'wah focuses on basar. Now what do I mean? Meaning you want to bring someone the best rational argument and prove it to him. But in essence, the da'wah isn't about the best rational argument. It's what wins the hearts. And in order for that, you don't need basar, you need basira. Right? So it's about the hearts. Understand that, we'll get into that a little bit more. So this is my way, say, أَنَا وَمَنَ اتَّبَعَنِي. Myself and those that follow me. How many people love Allah? Raise your hand. Okay, alhamdulillah. So all of you, we all claim to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? You know, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he gives us from the Quran 2 tests for this love. In other words, how do we test ourselves whether we truly love Allah or not? Who knows them? Anyone know? You the one that tests? Yes. Following the Prophet ﷺ. Anyone know the ayah? Right. Say that if you love Allah, right? In kuntum tuhibbun Allah fattabi'uni. If you truly love Allah, then follow me. And Allah will love you and forgive your sins and so on and so forth. If you truly love Allah, then you would follow the Prophet ﷺ, right? And what is this saying? قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ أَنَا وَمَنْ اتَّبَعَنِي. Say, this is my way. I call to Allah, myself, and those that follow me. So one of the things that you're doing when you're making da'wah is you are testifying to the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That you indeed love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me ask you another question. This is I'm diverting for a second. How many people would love to meet Allah right now? Okay, I would hope everyone. But here's the thing, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. How many people truly want to meet Allah? Like if you had to die right now, are you ready to meet Allah? And that's a question that, like I said, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. But I can tell you, some of us, we may say, you know what, I have this to do and this to do and this. Not yet, right? And remember, the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who loves to meet Allah, Allah loves to meet him. And the one that hates to meet Allah, Allah hates to meet that person, right? Now, may Allah protect us from that. Okay, that was just a side point. All right, reason number 3. وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنْ يَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. And certainly we sent to every nation a messenger saying, worship Allah and avoid the taghut. Real quick, now I'm going to test your knowledge, right? And I don't think Sheikh Mamdou is here, but anyways, someone tell me, what is the difference between a messenger and a prophet? Help me out. And sisters, you can answer too. It's not quiet time. So if you know the answer. The difference between a prophet and a messenger, yes?
Messenger is the one who brings the message,
okay,
from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala,
okay,
Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam,
okay,
and all the other ones are prophet. A messenger is a prophet, but not all the prophets are messengers.
Sure. So all messengers are prophets, but not all prophets are messengers.
Exactly.
And our brother said that the messenger is the one that brings a message. Does everyone agree? Yes? The book. Okay, so the messenger is the one that brings a book. Everyone agrees with that. Okay, quick. Yusuf alayhi salam, was he only a prophet or was he a messenger and a prophet? La, he was a messenger. La, he was a messenger, right? You go to the Quran, you read through it. He was a messenger. Now here's the question I have for you. If he was a messenger, what new sharia did he bring? What new book did he bring? None, right? He didn't bring anything. In fact, he was still upon the suhuf of Ibrahim alayhi salam. But yet he is a messenger. So this rule that we have, that we've learned in Sunday school, and I'm not knocking anyone, that's in Sunday school, and and generally that's what we're taught. Messengers are people that are the ones that receive Sharia, and the prophets are the ones that establish that. Okay? But so if our rule breaks down, so how do we distinguish between a messenger and a prophet? Well, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah gives us the correct answer. He says the correct view is that the messenger is the one who is sent to a disbelieving people, and the prophet is the one who is sent to a believing people. Now think about it. Put every messenger you know to the test. Every one. And start looking at it. And you see that they are sent to a disbelieving people, along with being a prophet. Remember we said every messenger is a prophet, but not every prophet is a messenger. Is that true? Every single person you can think of, every messenger you think of, was sent to a disbelieving people. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
What about Isa alayhi salam? Does our rule still stand? Okay, fine. He is messenger, no doubt.
No, he's been ulul azm.
Okay, he is the messenger ulul azm, yani ulul azm, the messengers of high fortitude, high. They're a very high azm, right? How do you? Anyways, I get it. But he's a messenger.
Yes.
Okay, what disbelieving people was he sent to?
They were already مغضوب عليه.
Okay, but you understand, if that's the case, then many prophets were sent to people that had issues, right? But as far as we know, he was sent to Bani Israel. Yes?
Yeah, he got the New Testament when he did that.
Okay, but listen really carefully.
Yeah.
The correct view is that the messenger is the one who was sent to a disbelieving people. If he sent to Bani Israel, they were believing at the time. Okay? So how is it that he still falls in this definition?
By bringing a new da'wah.
Someone that is exiled.
Wait, guys. Someone's exiled?
Exiled from the land of the prophet.
No. I'm going to tell you this. I still stand by Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah's definition. You want to know why? Here's why. Shaykh ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, gave us the answer. He says, look, yes, Isa alayhi salam was sent to Bani Israel. But Isa alayhi salam is still alive. And he's going to be coming back. And when he comes back, who is the target audience? Disbelieving people, right? So the definition still stands. So now when someone asks you, what's the difference between a messenger and a prophet? You know, right? You don't have to say the messenger is the one that has a sharia and the prophet is the one that doesn't. You've got a more coherent definition, right? Wallahu ta'ala alam. Now why did I mention this? Because if we think about ranking, we don't want to think about it too much, but ranking prophets and messengers, who has a higher rank? Generally, messengers. What is the function? What is the distinguishing characteristic of a messenger? Calling disbelieving people. What are we asking you to do today? To call the people to Islam. So when you're doing that, you're not only emulating prophethood, but you're emulating messengership as well, which has a certain rank as well. So think about that. Let that sink in. All right. Now, moving on. This gets to be the fun part. And this is the part where we tackle uncomfortable questions, right? How many people have questions that you weren't able to answer? Raise your hand, that a non-Muslim presented to you. And everyone else had no questions, really? Wow, you guys don't get out much, do you, right? They never gave you a question. Okay, so for the next few minutes, this is what we're going to do, okay? We're gonna do a little bit of role playing, right? Remember I said that this is not just me speaking for the next, 2 hours or whatever it is. We're going to do a little bit of role play. And I am going to play the non-Muslim. And you are going to be the Muslim, right? I think that's fair. And so, what's going to happen is, we're going to have you go through a little exercise, present you with a few questions, have you sweat a little bit while you're up here. And you're like, wait a minute, up here? I have to come up there? Well, the sisters don't, but you guys, yes. Now, I'm going to pick some volunteers, or I'm going to ask you to volunteer. If I get no hands, then guess what? It's a free-for-all. I get to pick whoever I want, right? So if I see you, you have a beautiful smile, I like how it is, boom, right? Everyone all of a sudden gets serious, right? Don't smile, all right? However it is. So, should we start with the sisters or the brothers?
Sisters.
I gotta tell you, in dawah activities, right? For those of you who have been part of MSAs, Right? No, hold on. For those of you who've been part of MS, how many people were part of their MSA? Their Muslim Student Association. All right. You guys, you know, right, that the sisters are the ones that do more work. Correct? Well, they were part of the MSA. They're not going to admit it. But I know from first-hand experience, I've been out of the MSA for like a decade now, right? Now it's testifying to my age. Anyway, so I know firsthand that the sisters are the ones that do all the work, right? So when the brother said sisters first, I was expecting that. All right. So what we have here is a roaming mic. And I need, is this thing on? Just push it. So you know I didn't go to school for anything related to technology, just letting you know. No, it's economics. All right, so I need a young volunteer. That little girl right there, would she help me out? Aisha, come here. Can you come help me? She's like, what? What are you talking about? Okay, who's gonna be my first volunteer from the sisters? Or I can pick on someone. So I'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2.
There's one
Sister Sadiqa? I don't see a hand. Am I missing it? Right there, okay. So I need you to take this mic, okay? Aisha, and give it to the sister in yellow hijab. Okay, Sister Sadiqa, is that your name or? Yeah. Okay, so Sister Sadiqa, what do you do? In the sense, like, do you work somewhere? Are you a homemaker? You work somewhere?
I'm a teacher.
You're a teacher?
Yes.
Okay, any interaction with non-Muslims?
Yeah, I used to.
Used to, okay. Where?
At work.
In school, in other words, right?
Yes, in school.
Okay, so let's say I'll be a fellow teacher, right? And since, you know, I want to be someone who's very smart, I'll be Dr. Johnson, right? Because I have a PhD in education and all of that, right? So I come in and let's say you drink coffee or doing like desi chai?
Coffee.
Coffee, all right, good. All right, so you're in the, what is it, teacher's lounge, you're getting your coffee, and I walk in, and how do they address you, by the way? Do they say Miss, Mrs.?
Miss Sadiqa.
Miss Sadiqa, all right. So Miss Sadiqa, I really like the work that you're doing with your class. I'm very impressed, and I just want to say I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
I hope this is a bad start to dawah if you're just quiet. All right. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to teach the children.
Wonderful. So listen, I had a quick question for you, and I hope you don't mind.
Okay.
I noticed that you wear that thing on your head, right? And some of the parents have kind of indicated that they're a bit uncomfortable with that, and I just wanted to know, why do you wear that? I mean, is it something, like, what exactly is it? Why do you wear that on your head?
I wear it is because it's the part of my faith and belief, and I feel very comfortable.
So but even in summer you feel comfortable? Like, it seems kind of hot.
Yes, I feel very comfortable in any time. Yes, summer you feel a little hot, but
so
my body adjusted accordingly, because
I see, okay. So you do it just because God said so? That's what you believe?
This is I am doing it because it's the obligation of my religion, and I would like to please my Creator.
Okay, so there's no like reasoning behind it though, just because God said so and that's the reason you do it?
And it shows my modesty.
Oh, it shows modesty?
Yes.
Okay, because my wife doesn't wear it, so I'm just kind of wondering, do you think she's not modest?
No, I understand.
I'm just wondering, because if that's what the Muslims believe, then are you saying that she's not modest? Because that would be kind of offensive.
No, this is not my personal choice, but this is the obligation.
So your husband makes you do it?
No, not at all.
Because you said it's not your personal choice.
No, I didn't say this is not like my choice. This is a choice. This is every Muslim woman supposed to do it because it's God instructions, and I would like to please God. That's why I'm following it.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay. JazakaAllah Khair. All right. Where is young Aisha? Aisha, I need you to grab the mic again. She's ready to sleep. All right. Who's my brother under fire now? All right. MashaAllah. Come on. Quick. I know you're sleepy, so it'll wake you up. No, not to me, but to get the brother, that beautiful brother with the beard and the cap. He's sitting there, mashallah. Well, mashallah, guys, come on. Mashallah. All right. All right, Brother Hisham. What do you do? And don't say something like, I worship Allah. Okay, no, I'm not. I know that. I'm saying, what professionally, how do you make money? Okay.
Yes, I have 18-wheeler business.
Oh, what business?
18-wheelers.
Oh, a trucking business.
Trucking.
Oh, that is cool. Okay, all right. So interaction with non-Muslim, like trucking stops?
Every day.
Every day. Okay, so I'm going to be a fellow trucker. All right, I'm going to call myself, what's a good husky name? What do you guys think? Huh? Bill. Yeah, I'm going Bill. All right, Bill. So I'm Bill, and trucking stops. They usually have like, whatever, drinks and stuff, right? Okay, so I come up to you and I say, hey man, what's your name?
Hisham.
Hisham.
Yes.
All right, I noticed you got the beard. Are you going for the hipster look, or what's going on?
What is it?
You going for a certain look?
No.
No. All right. Okay. Listen. So why do you have the beard?
You can say all the prophets since Adam until now they have beard, and I'm having beard like my prophet.
Your
I
prophet.
follow my prophets, yes.
Oh, so it's a religious thing.
It's the religious, and all the prophet has beard. So
what-
Jesus, Moses, everybody.
Oh, right. Yeah,
All
that's
the
true.
prophets,
That's
yes.
true. That's true. What religion do you follow, if you don't mind me asking?
Islam.
Islam. Oh
Yes.
man, it must be a tough time for you guys.
No.
No? I mean, because I gotta be honest, every time I turn on the television, it seems y'all killing people, man. What's going on? Why? I don't understand. Every time I turn on the TV, it's some guy, and I'm sure you're a cool guy, right? But I don't know, man. It's a tough one. I mean, I would hate to be you right now.
No. Actually, it's no problems to have a beard, to practice your religion, and we have no problem for doing our religion here in this country.
Okay.
And
Why is it? I guess what I'm trying to say is, man, you turn on the TV and it's just whenever there's some act of violence, it's always one of you guys. So your religion must teach that or something, right?
yeah, that's just the media. If you just follow the media, when you're going to think about Islam,
So that stuff doesn't happen.
no,
So it doesn't happen.
no.
Okay. JazakaAllah Khair. We need to speak about that. He's a trucker, on the road for a while. So, mashallah. All right, where is young Aisha? Oh, she's sleeping. All right, I need another young person. He's bringing the mic himself, mashallah. He's asking for young JazakaAllah. All right. Oh, you're back.
Ali's right here.
What's that? Okay, good.
It's gonna have to
All right.
do.
All right, sisters, another volunteer. Okay, go ahead and give. See the sister with her hand up? Just go ahead and give it to her. Way back there in the dark. Over here, Aisha. Over here. These wires are messing me up.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalam. What is your name?
My name is Hanna.
Hanna. Okay, Hanna, what do you do?
I work as a respiratory care practitioner.
A respiratory care practitioner, mashallah. Okay, interaction with non-Muslims.
Every day.
Every day, okay, in what setting, I guess?
Hospital.
Hospital, okay, so, oh, this is cool, okay, so I'm gonna be, yeah, I already took Dr. Johnson. I'm still gonna be a doctor, don't get me wrong. My dad always wanted me to be a doctor, so I can actually, Dr. McDonald? Okay, Dr. McDonald. All right, I'm gonna be Dr. McDonald. And let's do the coffee setting again,
Okay.
right? So I walk in and I say, hi, how are you? Are you new here? I haven't seen you around.
Oh, I'm great, thank you. Yeah, I'm fairly new.
Okay, what's your name?
Hamna.
What was it again?
Hamna.
Hamna, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, did I say it right? I don't want to mess it up.
No, you said it perfectly.
Okay, all right. So I noticed, you're wearing the headscarf, and you must be a Muslim, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, all right. So I had my cousin. Him and I disagree. He I gotta be honest, he voted for Trump.
Oh yeah?
And the thing is, he came up to me and he's like, you know what, these Muslims, they believe in a prophet that married a 7-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to know, I mean, is that true? Is that like, do you guys believe in a prophet that married a 7-year-old girl?
The thing is that the age is a little controversial, but if you look back in time, back in the day, that a lot of the prophets used to, the time was such that people used to marry younger girls.
Okay.
If you look into Christianity, Mary was about 12 years old when she married Joseph.
Yeah, I mean, Christianity is pretty messed up. I mean, I'm atheist, so it's kind of messed up.
Which religion do you follow?
Oh, I'm an atheist.
Oh, you're an atheist?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if you look back in time, then you will see that a lot of the, many generations ago, it was very common for people to marry younger girls. And the fact is that nobody in that society had any problem with him marrying a younger person. She was already getting proposals from other people. So it was a customary thing at that time, and nobody had any problem with that.
So, but that's not applicable anymore, right? Like, you can't do that according to your religion anymore, right?
Yeah, most people don't do that.
No, I mean, but is it allowed in your religion?
It is allowed as a religion.
But how does that make you feel, though? I mean,
well, it doesn't. It makes me feel. It really depends on the situation. If you're in a war-torn area and you are worried about the safety of yourself as a young Muslim woman, and you wanted to safeguard yourself, so you want to get married and.
But whatever. A 7-year-old? I mean, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and she she can't even make herself breakfast right now.
Absolutely. Not as a 7-year-old. That is still a child.
Right. So that's what I'm saying.
The thing is that back in the day, people used to mature a lot at a younger age.
So it's not applicable anymore. That's what you're saying. Like
pretty much.
It's just
not applicable.
And so, but does your religion still allow it, or is it just it's just not applicable anymore?
It is allowed.
That was then. This is now.
Yeah. No, it is as a custom. It's not followed anymore because a child is a child. However, in certain cases, if it's a situation where you're 12, 13, 14 years old, and God forbid you have a situation where you need somebody to protect you, then you are allowed to marry of whatever age group that you want to marry.
That's interesting.
You have that right to choose.
I see. Okay, all right, thanks. JazakaAllah Khair. All right, where is young Aisha or anybody else that's going to help me out? You want to help me out? What's your name? Muhammad. Actually, Aisha's on the ball, so we'll wait till she's sleeping. All right, one more from the brother's side, then we have to move on. So who is my next brother? So I have one there and one there. So I said, the young one down there. Okay, Bismillah. So you see that brother over there that has his hand? Put your hand up again. Right there. Go right over there and give me the mic. And by the way, you might be wondering, all right, so why am I doing this? So understand that this is a process, okay? There's a point that this is all gonna culminate to. I'm not just doing this for fun, even though I'm having a lot of fun, putting you guys in the hot seat. But the point is, there's a point to all of this, right? I'm not just doing it just for kicks and everyone enjoys themselves and then goes home and says, what was he talking about? All right, so where are we? Bismillah. What's your name?
Munib.
Munib. All right, Munib, what do you do?
I'm a student.
Student. Okay. College? High school?
Yes, college.
College. All right. What are you studying?
Construction management.
Construction management. Okay, good. All right. So interaction with non-Muslims?
All the
class?
time.
All the time,
Yeah.
right? So in class, coffee, projects, I'm assuming?
Exactly.
All right. So I'll be a fellow student. What do you guys think for a name?
Mike.
John.
Mike.
Mike? You like Mike? Trump. No, I'm not Trump, man. he's like, Donald, do Donald. It's like, no. I'm not doing that. I'll be Mike. I'll be Mike. All right. So I'll be Mike, and let's say we have some sort of project we're working on, and we meet at a coffee shop. Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. And by the way, you notice that I like coffee a lot. Just kind of, anyway, we're always meeting over coffee. All right. So we walk in, and I'm like, hey man, did you get started on the project?
No, I'm not going to do it until the last day.
Is that what your religion teaches you?
It's just personal.
Oh, no. All right. So listen, I'm a kind of a guy that likes to get things done ahead of time. So I'd like to get started. But before I do, listen, I had a question for you. I know you're a Muslim. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right. So I was wondering, man. I have another friend of mine. He's actually my roommate, and he said, like, I was making some food at home, and I offered it to him, and he just kind of like, oh, and he ran away. And I was just wondering, and then later on I asked him, I said, yo, man, why are you running away from my food? I was just trying to be nice and offer it to you. He said, no, you can't eat pork, right? So the question that rose in my head was like, why would God care if I eat a ham sandwich? Like, what's the big deal?
So the reason there's a lot of, well, I wouldn't say there's a lot, but there are some dietary restrictions in Islam. And the reason we believe that is because the person, or not the person, but the entity that made you is the one that knows what's best for you. So pork is considered an unclean meat.
But man, look, man, my granddad, he's like 100. And he's been eating bacon like every single morning.
Yeah.
And this guy is healthy as an ox.
That's good for him. I'm glad he's happy.
And he loves bacon, man.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know.
I eat bacon.
Well, you know, it's not just the bacon. There's other things that we can't eat, and we also have restrictions. Like there's halal meat, and halal meat is not. It's something that's not sacrificed in the name of any other god. We make sure that it's sacrificed in the name of our God, and also that the animals.
So hold up. So basically, as long as the pig is like sacrificed in the name of, what is it, Allah? Is that
No,
what
not at all. We
sacrifice and he's good.
No, we don't eat pork.
Oh, you don't eat it at all.
No,
like no matter what.
So, we'll get back to the pork thing, but
By the way, have you tried bacon?
No.
No?
And I don't think I ever will.
You are missing out, my friend.
Regardless of how happy your grandfather is, but
I know my happiness.
that's fine. No, we can be happy in other ways. There's plenty of other foods we can eat, but yeah, you're supposed to make sure.
I can tell you've not had bacon. Anyways, yeah, go ahead.
You're supposed to make sure that the animals are well treated. You know, they're not in any sort of distress when they're raised. They're fed well.
So basically I just want to know, so again, why would God care if I had a ham sandwich? Like, what's the big deal?
Maybe I just can't tell you. Maybe I just don't know.
All right.
As far as myself, I may not have the knowledge, but what I understand is that it's considered an unclean meat. It's unsafe and it's not good for us.
Okay, all right. I gotta bring that one back to my granddad, man. All right, JazakaAllah Khair.
I'm just gonna add something to his.
You have your chance.
No, to his.
No, you had your chance. What is it to his?
To his knowledge.
To his knowledge.
Yes.
Okay, bismillah, but quickly, because I'm running out of time.
Big is prohibited in the Bible.
Okay, but what if the guy's an atheist? He's like, khalas, I don't care about the Bible. Yeah, he's atheist. He's like, oh, the Bible, I don't care. Right? Anyway, I don't want to get into it right now. Okay, so this is opening. Okay, so let me shut this can of worms that I opened up. Okay? If we can get the mic back, where is Aisha? Can you get me the mic?
I got it.
You got it. Okay. JazakaAllah Khair. Okay, so how'd you guys feel about that?
Very weak.
Very weak.
Those guys, they're very weak. Except one of the sisters was medium well.
Medium. Wow, a harsh critic here, man. Everyone's weak. One sister, she's all right. Okay. All right, let's take a look. Were you satisfied with your answers, for the people that were answering and people that were observing? Right? Now just think about this yourself. Who was leading the discussion? Most likely it was me, right? Of course it was, right? And I was playing the non-Muslim, right? Okay, what was the discussion about? It was probably about some area of Islamic law or, something about a pig being unclean or whatever the deal was, right? Did you, in that conversation, call to Allah? And this is the point, right? Because the point is, da'wah is about calling to man? Allah Azza wa Jalla, right? So if in the midst of your conversation you never call to Allah, then what was the point of the conversation, right? Now someone might say, okay, well it clarifies certain, that's not what we're talking about. I'm saying in the realm of da'wah, you as a Muslim, as a da'iyah now, inshallah, did you call to Allah in that conversation? Okay. So in the end, let's say they're convinced, okay, you know what, I agree, pork, it's a bad animal, and it's very dirty, and I will stop eating it. Does that save the person from the hellfire? Not eating pork? No, it doesn't, right? Okay, did you reach your objective? Did you water down the religion? Okay, now this is where it gets a little bit dangerous, because sometimes we feel that we have to be a bit apologetic, right?
They were on the defensive.
On the defensive, right? And this is something that goes back to confidence about your religion, right? That remember, your religion, what you believe, what you're upon, is from the creator of the heavens and the earth. أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ. Does he not know what he created? Of course he does, right? So that confidence is in of itself a da'wah tool. Believe me, just the confidence that you have. You know, someone comes to you and says, okay, the age of Aisha. Okay, so what? Right? Or whatever, and we'll get to that a little later. But the point is, did you water down? Because what happens is sometimes we start thinking, okay, well, this is not acceptable to that person, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys, and I've spoken about this before. One time we were at we went to a Pakistan Day parade type thing, right? I didn't go there to celebrate. I went there to actually hand out CDs, back when we used to have CDs, to people to encourage them for the salah, right? So my friend, myself and my friend, who's African American, and so we were there handing out CDs. And I remember in the distance, there was a group of guys, right? They're all, I'm assuming, Pakistani, and then one guy who was Caucasian that stood out. So as he was coming by, my friend Khalil's like, hey man, are you Muslim? And he's like, no. He's like, well look, we're out here. We were outside of the parade, obviously, right? So the brother's thinking like, what's Brother Fahad doing inside? No, I wasn't inside. Anyway, so we were standing outside, and he said, look, if you have any questions, myself and Brother Fahad over there are standing here, feel free to ask us. So he goes inside, and a little while later he comes back out, and he comes to me. And he says, look man, I heard in your religion, you guys aren't allowed to transact with interest. Is that true? Now I gotta be honest with you, I froze for like a second, okay? Because all of a sudden I had these two voices that just popped up. One voice, I should say this one. One voice, left hand, one voice said, Fahad, what are you gonna tell this guy? You're gonna tell him the interest is haram? He's gonna be like, what kind of backward religion is this? How do you do credit, without credit, how do you establish businesses? How do you encourage entrepreneurship and yada yada yada? You're gonna tell him that? No. You need to sugarcoat it. You need to water it down. So this is one voice. Another voice, right, in my head, this is all happening in a second, says, Fahad, Allah Azza wa Jal speaks to us directly in the Quran. I want you to think about this. When Allah Azza wa Jal, when a question is asked, Allah speaks directly. قُلْ يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ. They ask you concerning, قُلْ so and so. Right? They ask you concerning this, say this. It's a direct. So Allah Azza speaks directly in the Quran, so Fahad, just tell him directly. Don't sugarcoat. So, to make a long story short, I went with the voice on my right. Okay? And what was the question? Is interest forbidden in your religion? And I said, yes. And I waited. And now all this happening in slow motion. Okay? So he's there, I'm looking at his reaction, and he says, that's awesome! And I'm like, it is? Like, yeah, it is, right? Point being is that eventually we started speaking about Islam, and alhamdulillah, the brother took his shahada. Okay? Now my point is that I had this inclination to water down the religion. Why? Because of that confidence perhaps, or whatever the reason is, and sometimes it happens to us. We start apologizing. One of the things you want to take away is don't apologize for your Islam. You want to write that down. Don't do it, right? What you're upon is better than what anyone else is upon. And that's what you're calling people to, okay?
There's supposed to be a problem.
Exactly. Okay, did you lie about Allah or Messenger? I don't think we had that. Did you fall into useless arguments? And I would say that's a resounding yes, and that's not what you want to do. Yes, sister?
Sorry, I just wanted to take you back. I didn't understand what you meant when you said, did you call to Allah? Can you explain what that meant?
Meaning the objective, right? So we haven't quite gotten there in earnest, but the objective of da'wah is to call to Allah, meaning you're inviting that person to Allah, right? Right? What exactly is da'wah when we think about it? It's ta'bid al-nas lillahi azza wa jal. It is to make people closer to Allah and worshippers of Allah, right? So in that entire discussion, did we converse about Allah, about worshipping Allah, about Allah's existence, so on and so forth? Most likely we didn't. We were in the realm of that particular Islamic law. So that's what I was trying to say, is that, did you call to Allah? And the next question is, what have you achieved? That's why the next question is follows right after that. So that's what we're talking about, inshallah. Okay. Why it fails? It's an endless cycle of questioning. We could have gone back and forth, and I could have told, whoever was back there talking about the pork, that listen, my granddad lived till 100, back and forth, and so on and so forth. All right. Number two, the answers do not satisfy the questioner. In essence, and why is that? Why would the answers not satisfy them, no matter what you give them? You want to know why? Because you are upon a different worldview. The pair of glasses that you're looking at the world are different than the pair of glasses that that person's looking at the world. Like if you have like green glasses with green lenses and he or she's wearing red lenses, and you're saying, no, that's green. It doesn't matter. If the lenses that they're wearing, their worldview is completely different than yours, right? So the point is, what da'wah does is to bring them to your worldview. And therefore, then when they start to engage with those questions that seem really kind of difficult, they have a different perspective about that. Okay? All right. It's a door to augmentation, false idea and reality about submission to Allah. All right. We're going to skim through this because I'm... All right. So, let's now get to the meat of this. What are we calling to? We said we are calling to Allah, but what is that? How do we do that? Right? Especially in the street da'wah environment, how exactly are we supposed to... How do we come up to someone? How do we start engaging with them? What happens when they ask us a question? How do we deal with that? This is the next part of the course we're talking about. And the approach we have is called the Go-Rap approach. Now don't worry about it. The Go-Rap stands for God's existence, oneness, revelation, and prophethood. Now you don't have to write that down, right? It doesn't mean that if you don't know this, you won't be able to make da'wah. Okay? If you don't remember the acronym, it's not like the end of the world. But just generally telling you about the method, okay? What is the stages? Initiation, common sense agreement. We mentioned what Go-Rap is. Now, what is the logic? We'll get to that later. I'm going to skip over this. Yada, yada, yada. Okay. Before you Go-Rap, before you introduce Islam to someone, right? I kind of mentioned this when we were talking about Basra versus Basira. When you are speaking to someone, they are going to be they may be bringing you arguments. And you're going to try, and this is just kind of in force of habit, because of the worldview that you're in, because of the context that you're in, try to explain that to the person. And what is the tool you're using? The rationale. So you're trying to convince your point in that person's brain. But da'wah isn't about the brain. What is it about? The heart. Right? Even when you go to the Quran, right? Open the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, right? After Alif Lam Mim, ba'da a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Alif Lam Mim, dhalika al-kitabu la rayba fi hudan lil muttaqin. This is the book where there's no doubt, a guidance for the muttaqin. But hold on a second. Muttaqin, does that mean that only Muslims have taqwa? Now what do we mean by taqwa? Let's go back to linguistics, right? Taqwa, it means protection. To protect yourself. That could be a Muslim or a non-Muslim. A non-Muslim could be in the state where they want to protect themselves. They understand that the truth is something that protects themselves from evil consequences, right? That's what the truth does. It protects you. So the person has to be in the mindset to have that mindset to be protected. Therefore, the Quran isn't just for Muslims. As we know, many times it addresses non-Muslims, but it addresses a certain state of the person's heart as well. It's not just rational arguments. And this is where a lot of du'at, especially in the beginning, get messed up. Because they think, and sometimes it happens even without you knowing it, right? Just last week when we were making da'wah, I found myself getting sucked into it. So there was a gentleman, there was a sister, she was making da'wah, we'll talk about that a little bit. But so she was making da'wah, I was called over, and he started telling me, he's like, look, you see, why does she wear that on her head, but why do the women have to wear that and the men don't? All right, so I found myself, I'm like, well, the thing is that men and women are different, and so on. And then I had to stop, and I said, whoa, hold on a second. I'm going down, I'm trying to appeal to this, and I need to recalibrate and appeal to this, right? At-taqwa ha-huna, as the Prophet ﷺ said. Taqwa is here, the heart, and that's what you're going for. So when you are thinking about you're trying to guide the heart, and within that, you have the person's fitrah. Now, real quick, the fitrah of the human being. The existence of Allah is in the fitrah of the human being, right? Rational principles are in the fitrah of the human being, okay? The concept of aesthetic tastes is in the fitrah of the human being, okay? All of that is in the fitrah. Now, what do I mean? Like, let's say you have, like, someone tells you something that's logically incorrect, right? That you can have 3 and 1 at the same time, if you guys know who I'm referring to, right? Now, they might say, no, like, you know, you can have 3 and 1. Like, 1 plus 1 plus 1 can be 3, or can be 1, sorry. What do you tell this person? Where do you go? He says you can't have it, you're saying no, you can't. Frankly, you can't go anywhere with that. Why? Because they're denying the logical principle that 1 plus 1 plus 1 is equal to 3. That is and if they deny that, then they're denying something within the fitrah, because logical principles are in the fitrah. If you deny the principle, you've got a problem. Okay? So the point is that the fitrah is where the target is. So rational arguments, they can affect the heart. Experiences can affect the heart. Let me just give you a quick example, and we'll break really briefly after this. Quick example, and you may have heard this. I think I mentioned this in a lot of khutbahs and so on and so forth. I was called out to, I wasn't called out, but I was in, I believe it was Oklahoma. And I had finished the Jum'ah khutbah, and I was leaving the masjid, and the imam of the masjid, he said, look, there's a non-Muslim woman in my office, and she has some questions about Islam. Would you mind talking to her? Right? So I said, okay, no problem. So I walk in, and the first thing she tells me, she says, I heard that your prophet killed or had 500 Jews slaughtered, beheaded. Is that true? Now, the initial reaction was what? No, the thing is, what you have to understand is that in the context of that's the initial reaction, right? I'm sure many of you might be thinking, you know what? We have to explain this. We can't just let this go. But I let it go. Okay? What's that?
I would say yes.
You, MashaAllah. Brother's a trucker, you can tell. He's like, yeah, so what? Bring it, right? Nevertheless, I didn't say yes. I said, that's very interesting, but would you mind if we just sat down and spoke for a few minutes? And she said, sure. So we sat down, and I asked her, I said, look, in order, like, I understand, you have this question, but in order to understand the background of this question, you need to understand a little bit about Islam. Okay? Now notice what I did. We're going to talk about this a little later, and in case we can't get to it, notice what I did. I didn't answer her question. I want to take her somewhere. Where do I want to take her? I want to take her to Tawheed. So I'm not answering the question directly. Now that doesn't mean that we're being sneaky or something like that, right? We're just we have an objective, and that objective is Tawheed. So she's like, okay, sure. I said, so what faith do you belong to? She said, I'm Christian. I said, okay, so I'm assuming you believe in the Trinity and that Jesus died for your sins. She said, yes, absolutely. I said, okay. Now, the good thing is that we believe in Jesus as well. Okay? And I'm assuming you believe in Adam. She said, yes. And I said, and I'm assuming you believe in the original sin. I said, of course. I said, that's where we differ, right? I said, in Islam, what we believe is in something called the fitrah. And what that fitrah is that every human being is born in a state of goodness. They're born on a state of good, okay? However, what you believe, or what Christianity professes to say, is that every human is born in a state of sin, meaning the base state of the human being is evil. So we believe the base state of the human being is good, and Christianity says that the base state of the human being is evil. And then I asked her, I said, look, I want to ask you, do you give charity? She said, yes, I do. I said, how do you feel? So, well, I feel really good. I said, if your base state was evil, you should feel terrible. You just gave your money away, right? If your base state is evil, you just gave some money for nothing. But you feel good. I said, you want to know why you feel good? It's because of your fitrah, that natural state that you were born upon. That's what God placed inside of you. Now, what did I do? I pointed to an experience that she had, that she testified, and that's more powerful than some sort of rational. I could have gone into, well, let me tell you, how can 1 plus 1 plus 1 be 3? And how could Jesus die for your sin? Was he alive? Wasn't he alive? I mean, we could have gone into all that. That would have been the rational side. And sometimes that works. But subhanAllah, after I mentioned that, I said, which one do you think is more likely? That Allah created you in a state of good, or that you have this sin that you're created upon and all generations move forward? He said, it seems more likely that you'd be created on a state of good. And from there we spoke about the original sin, about how Allah forgave Adam alayhi salam, no need for the Isa alayhi salam to die on the cross and yada yada, and she took her shahada before she left. Okay? But my point is, had I been in the rational realm, just rational arguments, perhaps I wouldn't have reached her. One way of reaching people is not only rational arguments, sometimes it's experiences. Sometimes it is rational arguments. Sometimes it is the Quran. We tend to underestimate using the Quran in da'wah. And I'm talking about an ayah and you recite it in Arabic. Arabic has an effect on the person you're talking to. Believe me, right? There's certain hadith of the Prophet ﷺ which have an effect. My point is, don't think your only tool of da'wah is rationality. Because Allah has blessed you with other tools. So use those tools. Because your objective is not winning the person's mind. It's winning the person's heart for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Okay, let's go ahead and break here. We're going to break for, I want to say like 5 or 10 minutes. I don't know if, do you know where Musab went? Did he just take off? He took off, huh?
I think he's outside.
He's outside? Okay, because I think they wanted to say something or do something. If not, that's fine. So let's break for like 5 to 10 minutes. But what I need from you guys is that you will come back, because we have a few pointers that we need to do, certain do's and don'ts, how to start a conversation, what to do when you get a question. I kind of alluded to that a little earlier, and certain do's and don'ts, what you can do, how you should dress, all sorts of funky things like that, right? So give it about 5-10 minutes. It's 9 or 8:50. Let's come back at 9 o'clock. Can we do that? You guys gonna come back? All right. So you guys gonna come back, and all of a sudden like half the people are gone, right? All right. Okay. 10 minutes. 9 o'clock. We'll be back. Get up. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-anbiya wal mursaleen. Nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Okay. Now we are back. Now, just real quick, a little. I'm gonna go off what Musab said really quick. Tomorrow, street da'wah at Herman Park. So if you're enjoying the session and there was something that I said and you saw another brother or another sister and said, man, if I was there, I would have said this, right? Well, guess what? You can actually be there tomorrow and say that, right? And then see what happens. But hopefully, we're hoping that the training will take you to the point where you perhaps won't be saying that. You may be taking it back to Tawheed. All right, that's number 1. Number 2, if you register, right, we'll send you the notes to this course, which the original 5-hour course, right? So this has notes that accompany it. So everyone that registered, you probably got the notes earlier today, and if you register tonight, then we'll send them out tonight as well. Okay, so just for that, you should register as well. Like I said, it's for the entire course. One brother mentioned you cover Hinduism and certain elements of like polytheism, pantheism. The 5-hour course, we get into it, but unfortunately, because I literally have like an hour or so left, can't cover it, right? But we are going to cover it, yes?
Does the notes include answers to the difficult questions you...
The notes, okay, so there's a point that I was trying to make with that.
No, I understand, but
right.
Is there something which you could partake, which is actually exactly the same questions you have?
Okay, so here's the thing. The questions that I had, okay, my point in going through the entire exercise was to say that if you are a Muslim and you have those questions, it's very different than if you're a non-Muslim, okay? For instance, the age of Aisha, right? Perhaps I think maybe the sister mentioned that in those days it was acceptable, okay? And in addition to that, none of the kuffar had a problem with it. You go through all the hadith narrations and the sira and so on and so forth, none of the kuffar, none of the mushrikeen, and they went to war with the Prophet, but they never said, oh, well, he married Aisha radiallahu anha at 7 and then consummated the marriage at 9. It was never an issue, okay? From a Muslim perspective, it'll make sense, right? But what I was trying to say is, as a non-Muslim, let's say you even give that explanation. Maybe it might work, maybe it might not work, but they're in a different worldview. So our objective is not to convince them of the issue. Yes, if you're having those doubts when it comes to you as a Muslim, those are something that we can discuss. But that's from a Muslim perspective, right? What we're talking about is how to engage with non-Muslims. So that's why we don't have the answers specifically how to answer them in that Because the point is that's not the philosophy that we're running with. We're running with get around that and get them back to Tawheed, right? And then, obviously advanced level courses. By the way, a little bit about IERA, that's the organization I work for. So this is a level 1 Dawah training. We do level 2 courses as well, which is, we do one called the Eternal Challenge, where we talk about the philosophy of science, we talk about the Quran, we talk about atheism in detail, neo-atheism, and so on and so forth. But that's a full day course, okay? And maybe, inshallah, I'm in this area now, we can bring it here and maybe spend a Saturday and go through it, right? So that's a level 2 course. The other level 2 course that we're introducing by this year is a level 2 course on Christianity specifically. Now, this is not textual analysis of the Bible. This is how to approach Christians on a more advanced level from the viewpoint of the Quran, right? One of the things that is unfortunate is many du'at, they don't have a connection with the Quran. And it's very unfortunate, right? Because your best da'wah tool is the Quran. All right? And I'm telling you that from experience, right? Initially, I was using all sorts of things. When I started making da'wah, I was using the Bible, right? So in any of the Quran, it just, I know John chapter this and Luke chapter this and all. And then, someone came to me and said, what are you wasting your time? What are you doing? Right? The Quran is awla, it's better. Like, why are you spending? And I was like, that's true, right? And when you start going through the Quran, it has an effect on you and it has an effect on your da'wah. Because we're going to see this in a little bit. There are 2 obstacles to the da'wah. One is the person you're talking to, the prospect, and one is you. Certain things will form impediments to you making appropriate da'wah. Okay? So anyways, where I was going with that, the philosophy that we're doing this level 1 course is to take people back to Tawheed, right? Then level 2, we get into other issues. Level 3, we start getting into Orientalist arguments, specifically. And so that's kind of stuff that we're still working on. Maybe I'm thinking to the end of 2018, we may have the first course related to Orientalism. But right now, we're doing level 2 courses, which is the Eternal Challenge on Atheism, and the Christianity course. Yes, real quick.
So to follow up on the brother's question, I think what he was referring to, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is in practical terms, we understand what you're saying.
Sure.
And we agree with what you're saying, and no problems there.
Sure.
But in practical terms, how do you gave us an example.
Right, how do you take them to Tawheed? So that's what we're going to talk about.
Without being evasive or appearing to be evasive.
Sure. Right, and that's what the next slides are about. Like when someone asks you a tough question, well how do you deal with that? Right, so that's kind of where we're going, inshallah. Okay. Any other questions before we move on? No? Sisters? No questions? It's very dark back there, so I have no idea. Yes, very fast.
Very fast. Was that call to Allah also mean Rabbi Shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri? That
is the dua of Musa alayhi salam, right? When he was going to speak to Fir'aun, that was the dua that he made, right? So when we say call, we're talking about inviting them to Islam, not dua. There's a difference between dua and da'wah, right? Dua is you're making dua, supplication.
I'm saying when you go for da'wah in your heart, you can.
Of course. So dua and da'wah are tied in the sense that when you're going out, like I said, this is a 5-hour course, so we didn't go over some of the elements of us as Muslims, in terms of sincerity, ikhlas, of dua, the state of your heart, what you should, so those things I had to cut out, right? So this afternoon I spent time like deleting slides, basically, okay? Only because I had to cram 5 hours into 2, right? So no doubt, you're absolutely right, that's true. One of the tips that I give when people are going out for street da'wah, I said before you go out, make a sincere dua to Allah that Allah guides someone at your hands. Okay? Because that guidance comes from Allah. It doesn't come from you and I. Right? We're just responsible for balagh. We're responsible for just telling them. But the one that guides the heart is Allah. That's why our focus is the heart as well. Okay, let's move on, inshallah. Okay, obstacles. Now remember, I just mentioned this a few minutes ago, and that was that there are certain obstacles which come from our perspective, and then there's certain obstacles that you'll get from the non-Muslim. So I want to talk about obstacles from our perspective. Okay? When you're out making da'wah, what are some of the things, what are some of the ways that will hurt your da'wah? Okay? Number one of them, expecting instant results. So sometimes what happens is some of the du'at, they'll go out, especially in street da'wah, they'll talk to 1 person, 2 person, 10 people, 20 people. And they say, you know what? None of them took shahada. Right? Because they're expecting that basically they're going to start talking to this person, and as they're talking, the beard's going to start growing, And you know, the guy's going to be like, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, right? Doesn't work like that. Remember, you're targeting the heart. You're talking about the psychology of a person. So, understand that in order to do away with this, you have to exhibit sabr, patience, right? And when you're making da'wah, you may talk to the person 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. I mean, there are people that, you know, we've spoken to, and years later, they became Muslim. Years later, right? They would come to the da'wah table, they would start arguing with us back and forth. And they would tell us like, no, so this is this and this, and you're sick of it, right? At a certain point, you're like, oh my God, it's that guy again, right? Here he comes. And then years later, he comes and said, remember all those times we used to argue? Well, I always knew that you were right. I always knew that you were upon the truth, right? So expecting instant results, that's something that's an impediment to moving forward. Okay, sometimes you'll convince yourself, how can I make da'wah? I don't have enough knowledge, right? How am I supposed to call this person to Islam? I mean, I myself, I don't know much, you know, I just come to the masjid, I pray, and I go, and that's it, and I go to work, and I don't know much about Islam. But the thing is, if you know enough to call yourself a Muslim, you know enough to make da'wah, right? Let me give you the quintessential example of that. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, on the very first day that he became Muslim, he brought in, depending on the opinion, but 5 or 7 of the Ashr of the 10 who were promised paradise. On the first day that he became Muslim, right? Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Now let me ask you, how much Quran had come down then? How much knowledge was available? None, right? I mean, very little, I shouldn't say none, very little. He knew, but he knew about Tawheed, right? That's the thing that came down, and that's what he was telling people. And on the first day, he brings in a certain number of the 10 who were promised paradise. You want to talk about a quality shahada? It's a quality shahada, it's quality shahadas, right? So if you have enough knowledge to call yourself a Muslim, that you understand Tawheed, that you worship Allah alone, you have enough knowledge to make da'wah. Now, as an additional point to that sometimes you may get a question and you just have to say, I don't know, right? Even if you're a scholar, there'll be times when you have to say, I don't know, right? Everyone knows the story of Imam Malik, right? The person that came to Imam Malik with, 60, 70 questions or whatever, and for every question he said, I don't know. And he said, you're Imam Malik, right? If you don't know, who knows, right? But that was Imam Malik. So sometimes you get a question, okay, I don't know. But I do know about Tawheed. And this is kind of going back to like bringing them back to Tawheed. But don't let this be an impediment. You say, I don't have enough knowledge, right? Because the scholars say, the day you wake up and say, Alhamdulillah, now I have enough knowledge, understand shaitan has deluded you, right? Because when are you going to wake up? You're like, okay, knowledge check, iman check, now I'm ready to go make da'wah, right? Who can say that? That's, you get a problem with sincerity and stuff like that, right? Okay. Now, the next one. I myself am in need of da'wah. This is another trick from shaitan. Like, I want to give da'wah, but I sin. I drink, or I do this, or I don't, whatever. So shaitan comes to you and says, you're going to give da'wah? You're the guy that, that you did this and you did that, right? You had an argument with your wife last night and, she put you in your place. You were going to give da'wah? Right? That's how shaitan comes to you. But understand that this is a trick from shaitan, right? I myself am in need of da'wah. There was Sufyan al-Thawri. He gives a very interesting statement. He says that if two Muslims are drinking together, drinking alcohol, if they're drinking alcohol, it is still incumbent upon one to tell the other that what you're doing is haram. Yani amr bil ma'ruf and nahy al munkar is still obligatory even though they're both drinking. Why? Because people conflate the two. They mix up the idea between their own, shortcomings and their obligation. Your obligation is the da'wah, right? So Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah, he mentioned even if 2 people are drinking alcohol at the same table, that one still has to tell the other guy, like, look, what you're doing is wrong. Whatever.
Do what I say, don't.
Right? Do what I say, don't. But it's still obligatory upon them, right? So don't let that be a trick. I myself am in need of da'wah. Street da'wah. I am too shy. Okay? How many people think that this is a problem for you? All right? All right, so you've got some of the sisters, some of the brothers, and some of the too shy to raise their hand, but that's okay. Okay? Anyway, so I'm too shy. Let me tell you the dynamics of street da'wah, frankly. Remember, that's our focus tonight. Street dawah is a lot like swimming, okay? When you're swimming, when you jump into the water initially, what happens? It's cold and you're like, ugh, right? But after a little while, you start getting used to it, right? Your body acclimates to it, okay? Street dawah is the same way. Even myself, after doing this for like 15 years, when I'm going out for street dawah, initially, there is a moment of, I'm uncomfortable. Like, oh man, I have to go on this guy, I have to tell him this, But you do it once, you do it twice, you do it 3, then it just flows naturally, right? It just becomes very natural to you. The point is, you have to actually try it and do it, and then you'll find that you'll get over that shyness, okay?
So, used to be shy also.
What's that? The Prophet ﷺ used to be shy.
Correct, very much.
And yet he still had to go out and make da'wah, right? Okay. Not knowing who you're talking to. Now this is another interesting one. In other words, you have a certain mindset in your da'wah and you're just going to apply that to every single person you meet. And we have certain dua to do that. So I know this one thing and I'm just going to apply that, right? So very early on, the people have this conception that, okay, well, the people in this country are all Christian. So they'll go to them and they say, okay, well, let me tell you about Islam. The Bible says all of this, and here's 5,000 mistakes in the Bible, right? So you have one method, and it's just boom, across the board. Why? Because you don't know who you're talking to. It's very important that when you meet the person, you get some information. Like, what's your name? Where do you come from? What are you studying? So on and so forth, right? You don't just jump into your spiel, okay? Because people will sense that immediately. They'll see that that's not really sincere. Okay. All right, so street dawah, a couple of points here. Number 1, time is of the essence. So there are certain tips that you need to imbue when you're on the street, because you don't have the time when you're doing street dawah to actually go to the guy. You go to him and you say, okay, well, let's have a conversation. And he says, you know what? Let's continue. Let's go out to have some kebab, and you go to the local restaurant, and then we go through the Quran together, and then Sahih Bukhari together, and then 3 years later, you're still. Street dawah is not like that. Street dawah, it's quick and efficient. Right? You gotta be quick and you gotta be efficient. We'll talk a little bit about how to do that. Travel in groups or pairs. Now what do we mean by this? This 2 and 3 are kind of tied. When you say travel in groups, we don't mean, this is another mistake. We don't mean that if you have someone that's making da'wah, that you take your group that came with the group that the group, and you go over and you start listening in and crowding around the guy. Okay? This is a problem. And I'll tell you why it's a problem. Okay, so there was a university that will go unnamed, which has some students from it here tonight, that I went to. And and they know who they are, and we were making some da'wah, and so there was a individual I was talking to, and we had agreed on the points, like, we're talking about tawheed, I'm making progress with him, right? I'm saying, okay, so do you believe in God? Yes, okay, and should you be thankful to that God? Yes, and so shouldn't that thankfulness translate to worship? Yes. So I'm getting a lot of yeses, right? That's another tip, by the way. Get them to yes with your questions. But anyway, so we're making progress. We're talking about the prophets, and he's, in my mind, he's very close. What happened was the MSA, they saw this engagement. So one person comes over. Oh, Brother Fahad, he's doing something. This is really cool, right? So one guy comes over. One second guy comes over. Sisters, they travel in groups too, right? So they all come over, right? So all of a sudden, this huge crowd is around me while I'm making da'wah with this guy. And I noticed immediately he flips. He's like, no, the thing is, Jesus, he's our Lord and our Savior, and then that's just it, that's it. He was steadfast. Let me ask you guys, what happened? Well, hold on, I'll tell you what happened. Remember we said that our target is the heart, right? It wasn't that the rationality all of a sudden changed, now he didn't understand the heart was affected. How? The ego. And this is one of the most dangerous things that happens in da'wah. If you think about the people that didn't accept Islam, the main reason they didn't accept it is because of the ego. Think about it. Abu Jahl. Why didn't he accept Islam? Did he not believe that the Prophet ﷺ was a prophet? No, he did. But what did he say? We are from Banu Makhzum. And these people, Banu Hashim, we're not going to accept a prophet from them. Right? Because they had that competition. So what was it that prevented him? The ego. When you start crowding around, someone's making da'wah, and you start crowding around, this is going to have an effect on the person's ego. So, one of the rules that are in a later slide, but since I'm on the topic, don't crowd around people, right? You should have yourself and one da'wah partner, right? That's it. You work in pairs, especially in street da'wah. Because the ego, and subhanAllah, I'll tell you something, Allah has kind of mentioned this in the Quran as well. the ayah that I'm thinking about. قُلْ أَعِذُكُمْ بِوَاحِدٍ. Say that I advise you one thing. أَن تَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ. That you stand for Allah. مَثْنَا وَفُرَادًا. That you stand as pairs or as individuals. ثُمَّ تَتَفَكَّرُوا. And then you ponder. Why did Allah say stand as pairs and as ones? Think about it. Because when you're alone, there's no ego. Who are you going to show off to, right? You're not going to show off to the plant in your room and be like, oh, well, I can't accept Islam, the plant is there, right? You're not going to do that, right? Or as another individual, fine, you're having a discourse. Because the ego is at its lowest, right? So anyway, my point is that when you're going out, traveling, you go to your street dawah as a group, but you work as pairs, okay? All right, moving on. All right, I've got some do's and don'ts. Do's, be patient. Be prepared to run across people who don't want your dawah. Be straightforward. I mentioned this earlier with my whole thing where the guy said, all right, well, interest is haram. Be straightforward. Allah speaks to us directly. Speak to the people directly, right? Avoid unnecessary confrontation arguments. Simply move on. Keep your eye on the ball and keep the ball rolling. I'm going to stress this again. Coming to Tawheed and talking about Tawheed is the most difficult thing you will do in your da'wah. Because it is so easy to get diverted. Very easy, right? So you're trying to build, you're building a case. You're saying, okay, you believe Allah exists? Yes. Do you believe they should be worshipped alone? Yes. And then the guy starts talking about something else. Listen, I heard that chickens are that you have to cut them in a certain way. And then all of a sudden now you're on the chickens, right? And the guy's like, but I don't think that's not fair. You know, chickens have rights. And you're like, yeah, but see, the thing is, human rights in Islam, and boom, you're on another planet, right? So when we say keep your eye on the ball and keep the ball rolling, you have to focus, like your life depends on it, on Tawheed, right? You've got to stick with it because you'll easily get diverted, right? And it's, like I said, it happens to me till today. All right, have a partner with you. I already mentioned that. Use simple language, okay? I know a lot of you brothers, you're very educated, you studied a lot in Sharia and so on and so forth, but understand you're speaking to a non-Muslim. When you get into the issues that they may come up with, and you start talking very technically, they're going to be lost, right? Start saying, well, okay, this is ayat kawniyya, Qur'aniyya, hakada. It's just you're kind of on another level, right? You have to bring it down. Make your language simple, even in English. So if you're educated and you don't use words like, you've got like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, don't use words like that, all right? Make it simple. Keep your da'wah simple. Because the simple da'wah will attract the one that's intelligent and the one that's simple, right? Okay. Understand needs, obstacles, and issues. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Listen with your eyes and your ears. 78% of communication is non-verbal, okay? So what that means is how you stand will have an impact on your da'wah. If you're standing like this, okay, it's going to have an impact on your da'wah. Or like this, it's going to, how you stand has an impact on your da'wah, right? Your facial expressions. The fact that you're listening. One of the main issues that we have as Muslims, I got to tell you, is nobody listens. People will come to you with a question and they won't wait for your answer, right? They say, okay, was this haram? Well, the thing is that, yeah, that's what I thought. I knew it, right? Because they're coming to you with some sort of preconceived notion, right? And so listening, you have to listen to the person that's talking to you. Otherwise, you won't know where he is in terms of the state of his heart and so on and so forth. There may be something in his conversation that gives you an analysis of where he is. You're talking about something and he's talking about his problems with his wife at home and how he's going through a divorce. That's going to have an impact on your da'wah, right? So, all right. So listen, you have to listen. Try to coin statements into a positive manner and highlight words like good and yes, okay? Now this is important as well. Does anyone in sales by any chance? Nobody? Nobody does sales? Wow, okay. Everyone's doctors, right? Anyways, okay. So one of the things they tell you in sales is that you're always trying to get agreement. You're always trying to get to yes. Because that has a certain psychological impact. And it's no different in da'wah. You want agreement as you're moving forward, right? So when you're talking about Tawheed, do you believe in God? Yes. Okay, now you got a yes. Okay, if they say no, then you need to backtrack and say, okay, well, let's go ahead and talk about that. You got yes. Do you believe in prophets? Yes. Do you believe that that God would send prophets? Yes. So you want them to get to a yes, right? Do you love Jesus? Yes. Get to yes, because a yes is something that's going to continue on in your conversation as you're making da'wah. Okay? This one, be neat and clean in appearance. I mean, what do you want me to say, man? Like, I think it's kind of obvious. Okay? Like, just wear some clean clothes, you know, put on your deodorant. I mean, I don't know. It's just, what do you want me to say? Okay? I mean, I gotta tell you, I mean, sometimes from the brothers, you know, we'll be at the masjid and, you know, you have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which tells us not to eat like onions and garlic. And man, you're standing in salah and all of a sudden the guy says, As-Salaam alaikum wa rahmatullah. And you're just, coma, right? So, be conscious of your oral hygiene, okay? Your clothes, let them be clean, put on some deodorant, you know, shower. I mean, these are things that go without saying. This is how Muslims should be, right? In general, as is. But it also has an impact on your da'wah. If you're talking to someone and you have like the staunch garlic breath because you just enjoyed a big plate of biryani, okay? The dude's gonna know that, okay? He's gonna be like, you know what? I really agree, but I gotta go, look at the time. My mom's calling me, whatever, right? So be neat and clean in appearance, you know, if that's an issue. All right. Do's, get your prospect to listen, nod, open gestures, lean forward, maintain eye contact, don't stare. All right. One other thing that I didn't add to the slide is remember distance. There is something called personal space. And a lot of us, we don't understand personal space. So can I ask you to get up? Okay. So sometimes when we're talking to someone, we're literally like this. So the thing is, I was saying that what you have to do is you have to listen and you have to accept Islam, and this is so literally in the guy's face. And we may not realize it, but you can go snap this out. We may not realize it, but people need some space, right? So have like at least an arm length, or at least half an arm length. Give them some space, okay? Use open gestures, maintain eye contact. When you're with someone, you have eye contact, but don't stare them down. Not be looking at someone making da'wah and be like, so the thing is, the thing is you gotta get God exists. Let me tell you why he exists. The reason he exists. So now the guy's not really listening to you. He's just like, yo, he's a freak, right? So don't stare. Smile. Like, you see, these are points that you guys know, right? I mean, this is from our tradition. But the reason they're up here is because a lot of people don't do it, especially in da'wah. And I don't know why, right? Like when you're talking about something, I mean, maybe you're upset, or maybe you had a bad day, maybe you had a fight with your spouse. I don't know what it is. But man, you gotta smile, right? I mean, this is part of our tradition when you come to the masjid and meet, and with non-Muslims, you gotta smile, man. All right. Find points to agree upon, present them with concept, they'll get you a yes, I already mentioned that. Acknowledge questions as intelligent, okay? Again, we're not here to put people down, we're here to raise them up. You are mercifully calling people to the truth. So if someone says, even if it's the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, right? Don't put it down. Don't be like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, right? Don't say that, right? Acknowledge it, like, I see, the most, you can say, look, I see, okay, okay, just at least do that, right? But don't degrade someone, no matter how strange you think their idea is, okay? So that's a good question. I'm glad you brought that point up. I can see why you understand it that way. Ask for a name, okay? But here's the thing, ask for the name and remember the name, okay? You ask for the guy's name, you're like, so what's your name? John. Okay, so John is, you're going to the, okay, so Tawheed, and this is the, what was your name again? John, yeah, so, what's your name again? John, oh yeah, okay, John. So, that looks really bad, right? Because clearly you don't care that his name is John or Frank or Mike or Smith, or you don't care less, because you just want to give him the hop, right? Remember the guy's name. Have some sort of mnemonic in your head. However you do it, make it a point. Because that also brings you near the person. Remember, we're winning the hearts. If you say, John, my man, this is the thing. I mean, maybe even tell the guy, look, in our religion we believe that John, that name is Yahya, which has to do with life. If you know about that, it has to do with life, and you seem like a guy that's just very lively, right? And so if you got a few minutes to talk to me, whatever it is, but remember the guy's name, okay? Or the sister's name. All right. Find out the beliefs of your prospect. That is going to tell you what you need to focus on, okay? If you just go in, again, you shouldn't have a spiel that you've written out. Find out what they believe in. Avoid human obstacles. That was kind of what I spoke about the groups and things like that. But sometimes what will happen is that you may have someone come and you're making you're making progress with the person, building them up to Tawheed, and someone else will come and throw a monkey wrench in your whole system, okay? And it's happened. So you've got like Sheikh Kamal al-Makki, right? A lot of the stuff I've taken from him, by the way. He mentioned that he's like making da'wah this guy, he's building it up, right? He's going from, the existence of Allah. Then he moves to Tawheed, the Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah. He's going to the prophets. And then some guy comes in and he goes, let me tell you about the miracle of chlorophyll in the Quran. And he's like, chlorophyll? It's like, okay, wait a minute, we're going somewhere else. So he starts going, well, the thing is, the plants and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, okay. And he's building his case again. He goes, and the chlorophyll. And then he's going back, and it's a mess, right? So my point is, sometimes you'll have human obstacles. And this is why it's important. No, don't do that, right? My brother's like, right? You definitely don't want to do that. This is why it's good to have a partner. That way, when you and your partner, you have an understanding, your partner can come over, right? You can signal him, you have this understanding with your partner, you give him an eye contact, you're like, right? He comes over and he says, brother, I heard you talk about chlorophyll. Let me talk to you about that. And you can go ahead and continue your dialogue. Okay? It's important to have a partner. Right? So, sometimes there'll be human obstacles that you have to engage with. Now, this is the main point. This is the one rule. And that is, go for the gold, make the sale, ask for the shahada. Okay? When you made the case, right? You've gone through Tawheed, right? And you've gotten a yes. Do you believe in God? Yes. Do you believe that He should be worshipped alone? Yes. Do you believe in the prophets? Yes. Do you believe that Muhammad ﷺ is a prophet? Yes. You've got all the yeses. Well, don't just leave it there. Like, all right, have a nice day. And you just walk away, right? Well, the guy doesn't know what to do, right? You just, or you're just going to stand together like just looking at each other. No! So we go ahead and take the shahada, man. You should become Muslim right now. Okay? That's the second rule that I don't think we'll get to that slide. Creating the sense of urgency. When you tell someone, look, take the shahada, he's agreed with you, or she's agreed with you, well, they say, okay, well, no. I don't want to take the shahada. They've agreed with you. Well, find out what it is. Well, why not? Is there something about Islam that you didn't like? No, I liked everything. I need time or whatever it is. Find the problem, analyze it, and encourage them to take the shahada. Right? You see this throughout the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Right? You remember the story of the Jewish boy when one of the Sahaba came to the Prophet ﷺ. He said that this Jewish boy is about to die. He used to work for the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ raced over to this Jewish boy's house. Okay? And the narrator of the hadith said that he was walking so fast he had trouble keeping up with the Prophet ﷺ. So he comes in and he goes inside the house and he sees the Jewish boy is about to die. And he tells this boy, he says, say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. The boy looks at his father, okay? Who's also Jewish, obviously. So his father looks at him, looks at the Prophet ﷺ, and then he says, Ata' Abul Qasim. Obey Abul Qasim. Abul Qasim was the patronymic of the Prophet ﷺ. So the young boy, he takes his shahada, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, and he passes away. The Prophet ﷺ is walking out of the house, and the narrator of the hadith says, we saw tears in the eyes of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Alhamdulillahi alladhi anqadahu bi minan nar. That all praise is due to Allah who saved him through me from the hellfire. Right? So you will always see that the Prophet ﷺ is encouraging the person to take the shahada. Right? You remember, who was it? Uqba ibn Mu'ayth, right? He goes and invites the Prophet ﷺ. This is in the early days of Mecca. Invites him over for food. And the Prophet ﷺ says what? I will not eat until you take the shahada. Some of us say, well, I would never do. Well, the Prophet ﷺ did it. Right? An example, I could go on all night. Examples, the Prophet ﷺ would do things like that. Right? So the point is, ask for the shahada. If you've built the case, they're on Tawheed, you've got them where you need them, they've understood Tawheed, ask for the shahada. Right? Sometimes you may think, okay, this person will never take the shahada. Right? Ask for it anyway. I'm telling you, you don't know that Allah Azza wa Jalla has guided the heart of someone or not. Okay? Ask for the shahada. That is the golden rule. Alright, moving on. Some don'ts. Don't start by attacking and being aggressive. Don't use an approach that may annoy people. Don't be evasive. Never use the let's not push him technique. Now what do I mean by that? Sometimes what happens is you're making a case, and you've made your case, the person's agreeing with you, points of Tawheed, so on and so forth, and then someone will come up and be like, you say, okay, why don't you take the shahada? And someone comes up and says, no, let's not push him. He's not ready. Like, how do you know he's not ready? Right? But did you get wahi or something that told you, okay, this guy's not ready? Like, what do you mean he's not ready? Right? But see, I think the reason is because sometimes people mix up the difference between Islam and Iman, right? Islam is the acceptance. Iman, yeah, maybe he doesn't have full Iman yet, but there's a difference, right? قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لن تؤمنوا وقولوا أسلمنا, right? When the Bedouins came to the Prophet ﷺ and they said, we have Iman, Allah just says, no, you don't have Iman, but rather you have submitted, you have Islam. So we're not saying that these people, when you're making da'wah to them and you're trying to give them the shahada, that they're going to have Iman now, right? But that you're pulling them into Islam, right? And again, you go to the seat of the Prophet ﷺ. Remember what happened with Abu Sufyan, right? Remember, Abu Sufyan, radiallahu anhu, was one of the last people to accept Islam. And when he was there, the Prophet ﷺ said you should say the Shahada at the end before they're about to go to Mecca. And so Abu Sufyan says, look, and the Prophet ﷺ said, look, you should testify there's nothing worthy of worship except Allah, and that I am the messenger of Allah. Abu Sufyan says, as far as there's nothing worthy of worship except Allah, La ilaha illallah, I don't have any problem with that. But I have a problem with that you are the messenger of Allah. And so the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, Al-Abbas, says, do it, right? Just go for it, do it, right? The point is that there's this encouragement. They're not saying, okay, well, let him wait and all. It's not about that, right? And of course, later on, you know that Abu Sufyan became Muslim, but he himself tells us that Iman did not enter his heart until later, because they were sitting around and there were two other people, and when Bilal radiallahu anhu went up to the Kaaba and he starts making the adhan, one person says, I'm happy my dad died, my father died before he would see the day that this black slave would go up and make the adhan and be on top of the Kaaba, right? Another person did something else. When it came to Abu Sufyan, he says, I'm not going to say anything because the Prophet ﷺ will know about it. And sure enough, the Prophet ﷺ comes a little while later and says, you said that you were happy that your dad was not alive at this day to see that this black slave and so on and so forth. You said this, and oh Abu Sufyan, you said that I will not say anything because the Prophet ﷺ will come and inform you. Abu Sufyan says, that was the moment when Iman entered my heart. But he became Muslim before that, right? So don't conflate Islam with Iman, okay? All right, so never use the let's not push him technique. You want to push him, all right? All right, never interrupting a person giving da'wah unless you have a very good reason and you have a good point your partner overlooked, and that is not chlorophyll. I'm just letting you know. All right, do not begin a sentence with no or what you need to understand. Don't use but as it erases all that was before it. Instead, use I agree or I understand and so on and so forth. Last point, I think it's the last one, second last. Don't get into negotiation. Your deen is not a negotiation. Right? When the Prophet ﷺ was presented with things that he could negotiate, he didn't negotiate. He said, this is the truth and this is what it is. Don't get into a negotiation, okay? Sometimes what happens is, especially when you're talking about areas of Islamic law, that's where negotiations start, right? So tell me, why is it that in your law that the hand of the thief can be cut off? Right? So you may say, well, the thing is that, it's all archaic law, and, that's going to, and it's only one country that does it right now, and later on they'll change, and then, don't get into it. It's not a negotiation, right? What you're upon is better than what they're upon. And that includes the law, right? So don't get into negotiations. This is not something you negotiate. You're upon the truth, inshallah. Okay. Give up if the person seems, don't give up if the person is uninterested or makes fun of you, right? Sometimes what happens is that someone may make fun of you. But I want you to think again about the Prophet ﷺ. How many people made fun of the Prophet ﷺ and said things to the Prophet ﷺ, but you don't see him giving up, right? And sometimes it'll happen to you. Like, oh man, you're out here like calling people to Islam, but you guys are all just go around killing people and this and that and blah, blah, blah. They'll say all sorts of things to you, right? Keep going, keep pressing. Because what you're going through is not as bad as what the Prophet ﷺ went through. Okay. Don't falsify or exaggerate information. Don't misrepresent Islam. Don't misrepresent Islam's position regarding the other party. Don't make the kafir comfortable with his kufr. Right? Don't make the kafir comfortable with his kufr. Okay? Very important point. Right? When we talk about negotiating, don't now start capitulating on things and giving up on certain things because you're afraid to hurt the guy's feelings. I'm not saying be rude, right? But I'm saying, stand your ground when you need to stand your ground. Okay? Alright, don't make a judgment based on looks. Sheikh Kamal mentioned something interesting as well, related to that. He said they were at this march in Washington, D.C. And in this march, he said that, we were giving out pamphlets. And he says that, I was giving out pamphlets looking for people to talk to, and then he says, I see this guy in the distance, and he says this guy, he was wearing like a tank top, and he had tattoos all the way down, all over his body, everywhere, like all the way up to his neck. He had piercings everywhere you can imagine, like his nose, his ears, his eyebrows, his tongue, his everywhere, piercings everywhere. And he said he had hair like a chicken, right? That was pink. So you can imagine, and he said on top of that, he was wearing white contact lenses, okay? He's walking towards them, and Sheikh Kamal's like, man, I'm not making doubt of that shaitan. And he walks over, right? So he goes, as I walk past him, I saw some other nice, Caucasian couple. I go over there, the birds are singing and stuff, everything looks great. And I go over there, and they weren't even interested. And a few minutes later, some of the brothers like, Brother Kamal, come over. That same guy that I passed by, he said, I woke up this morning searching for Allah. So don't make a judgment based on looks. You don't know who Allah is going to guide and who is not going to guide. Okay? So now I think Sheikh Kamal says, look, I don't care if you have a totem pole through your nose, I'm still going to make da'wah to you. Alright? Anyway. Okay. Now let's get to a few points of initiation. I need to cover them a bit quick. Initiation has two areas. You are going to be asked an uncomfortable question. Do you wear hijab? Why do you have a beard? Or you're going to be the one that's engaging someone and asking them the questions. Okay? Now, how do you deal with uncomfortable questions? Very simple. That's a good, important, interesting question. Smile, introduction, shake hands. But in order to understand that, you need to understand the foundations of Islam. You have a few minutes to understand that. Okay. This is not rocket science. But what you might be thinking is that, okay, well, aren't you avoiding the question? No, you're not avoiding the question. You're hanging the question in abeyance, as they say. You're just leaving it there because you have a different goal. Okay? And sometimes people say, well, wait, you're not answering the question. But I'm saying, look, in order to understand the answer anyway, you have to have a foundation. You have to understand Islam. Right? That's usually the case. So if someone says, look, I'd like to understand trigonometry. But I don't know the first thing about adding or subtracting or anything like that. Can they understand trigonometry? No, right? You need to have a foundation. So the point is, when someone comes to you, they ask you some sort of question. They ask a sister, why are you wearing that thing on your head? Right? They ask a brother, like, I heard you got 4 wives. Or whatever the deal is, right? Okay? So you don't say like, no, I do not have 4, well, you should. But anyways, I don't know. Anyways, my point is you can say, look, that's a very interesting question, but in order to understand the answer, you need to understand the foundations of Islam. Do you have a few minutes for that? Now, what did I do? I took the question, and I'm putting on hold. Remember that sister, that one that took Shahada in Oklahoma? I was on the plane home, and I realized I never answered her question. You remember the question was, I heard that your prophet put 500 Jews to death, or whatever she said? That was her question. And on the way home, she's Muslim now, and she's in Oklahoma. I talked to the imam, he's like, yeah, she's great. But understand this, now when she reads the Sirah, and she reads that portion about what happened after the Battle of Khandaq, when they were, when she reads the portion of Sirah, she has a different worldview. And so she'll read it with that worldview, right? Okay, so it's not that we're not answering, we're trying to evade the question. What we're saying is that you need to have the right tools for the question. So someone comes to you, they say, whatever question X, like, why do you guys cut off the hands of the thief? Whatever it might be, interesting question. In order to understand that, you need to understand the foundations of Islam. Fair enough? Okay, good. Who wants some practice? We'll pick one from the sisters and one from the brothers, really quick. One brother. You already went, man. Okay, Bismillah, come on up.
And then somebody else.
Someone else. Okay, so let's say you are outside with us making street dawah, and I come up to you, and I say, hi, I had a question. I saw your table here, and I was wondering, I heard that you guys, you believe that that God is like this big green monster in the sky. Is that true?
No.
No?
No, that's not true. Okay.
That's why we're practicing, right?
I mean, you cannot see that God. I mean, you cannot make him as a figurative thing like a human being or any other living being. It's a belief that you have a faith that there is a universe, the creator is there. That's
Okay,
the
stop.
faith.
All right, perfect. Stop. That's all it is. All right, now the reason that I asked him that is because this is not a hard and fast rule. I mean, if someone says something totally crazy, you don't say, oh, that's a very good question, right? You believe in a big green monster in the sky and that's Allah? Na'udhu billah? Well, that's a very good question. But in order to understand the answer, you have to understand, no! You can just say no. Okay? And then say, would we like to talk about a little bit about the foundation of Islam, right? Someone comes to you and says like, oh, Muslims are just out killing people left and right. Not to be like, yeah, I understand, that's a very, but in order to understand that, you have to understand. No! You can just say, no, that's not true. And then move on. Okay? So this is not a hard and fast rule for every single question. But the questions that are difficult, if you know there's some truth to it, you can move wrong and move straight to Tawheed. The sisters want to practice, you just move on because I have just a few minutes left and I want to get to a few other slides. Yes? No? I don't see any volunteers. Alright, we'll have them practice maybe in the second one. Alright. How to start a da'wah conversation. Now, this is called the straightforward approach. You're out, let's say you're out with us tomorrow, you're making da'wah, and you go up to someone, you say, hey man, you Muslim? He's like, no. You're like, why not? That is great, because you will get the most amazing answers. Well, I don't know why not. Well, come over here, let's talk about it, right? Or you have some guy who's like, because the Lord and Savior is Jesus Christ. But what happened? You know why this is a good approach? Because immediately, remember, in street da'wah you have limited time, right? So you immediately identified a few things. Number one, this person is probably a Christian. Number two, they're very passionate Christian, okay? And so number three, you know where your da'wah is going to focus. He's not an atheist, so you don't have to worry about belief in God. You can go straight to Trinity versus Tawheed, right? Very straightforward. But I will admit that this is difficult for most people, okay? Most people, when they go for street da'wah, they don't use this approach. But I'll tell you what's really interesting. Kids use this approach, okay? Not that they're making da'wah, like my son, I took him to our doctor, she's Jewish, and he asked me, he's like, hey, psst, Baba, is she Muslim? And I'm in da'wah, right? So I'm like, ask her. Right? So he's like, excuse me, doctor, I won't give her name, but he said, excuse me, doctor, are you Muslim? Oh, she's like, no. So, well, why not? And I was like, boom! She's like, well, it's okay, but let's start with the checkup, Didn't even answer the question, So anyways, okay. So that's one approach, the straightforward approach. And it's good, right? And, if you're a little acclimated within the field of da'wah, you will find this approach is good. The not so straightforward approach. Now this is something like, if you know that the people you're talking to, let's say you're speaking in an area which is heavily populated with Christians, do you know about the religion of Jesus? Okay, something like that. Do you know the purpose of life? Do you know about Islam? Excuse me, today we're asking people if life is just a game. That's the campaign we have today. We're asking people, is life just a game? Okay, when you're going out to people, have some sort of opening line that will get people's attention. Okay? Now some of these are a bit mundane. I have to be really honest. If you go to someone and says to me, do you know about Islam? That's kind of lame. Not that the question's lame, but it's not really going to attract people, right? So you need something that's going to actually get people to stop and talk to you, right? And some of these questions, they may not. The purpose of life one might, right? Because, from our perspective, we understand the purpose of life, right? Right? We were not created, Allah, that I did not create the jinn and the ins except to worship. So we know the purpose of life is to worship Allah. But if you think about it, the majority of people, they're in the rat race outside. They're just going day to day. They're just, they're going to work, coming home, going to school. There's the idea of a purpose. If they've thought about it, they're just really, it's an intriguing question for them. For us, it's like, okay, whatever, right? So, do you know the purpose of life? We're asking people if life is just a game, so on and so forth. But have some sort of opening with someone, and something that will be attractive. We know some brothers, they do all sorts of crazy stuff. Okay? So some of the brothers in the UK, I've seen them do things where they just, people are walking by, it's like, hey man, is that a Brooks Brothers suit? And the guy's like, no. He's like, oh, okay, but man, you look really good in that suit. Right? And all of a sudden they start a conversation. Or whatever, something about sports, the Super Bowl is coming up. You see someone with like a Texans shirt. They're like, hey man, you a Patriots fan? Ha ha! And the guy's like, what? How dare you? I'm like, I'm just kidding, man. Hey, let's come over here and talk to us, right? Have something that will be a little different, okay? But again, if it's not your thing, then start slowly and you build up to that, inshallah, right? All right, that's starting a da'wah conversation. Next point, common sense agreement. Now, why am I saying this? Before you get to, let's talk about tawheed and so on and so forth, you want to have the person agree that what you're going to be talking about is you're going to be using common sense. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because you will be building up your case and maybe halfway through the person will do a U-turn, right? And it's happened. And so the point of doing this is that when they make that U-turn, you can say, wait a minute, you know, if this is just a mystery, we said we're going to agree on common sense, or whatever it might be, right? You agreed to that at the beginning, right? So get that common sense agreement before you start off, okay? So look, what we're talking about, we both agree that common sense is the way to go. When you cross the road, you don't just go blindly, you look both ways, right? The example that the brothers in the UK give, they talk about the man in the red underpants, which I told them, like, dude, in underpants, and then people think they're actually pants in the States, right? It's actually supposed to be underwear. So the idea is if someone shows up in a red underwear to your door and knocks on your door and says, hi, I'm here to fix the air conditioning, are you going to let him in? How many people would let the guy in? Nobody, right? But why would you not let him in? Well, you use your rationale to say, okay, number one, people that come to fix my air conditioning are not going to be showing up in their underwear, in red underwear to my house, right? Number two, this guy is probably crazy and I should call the police, okay? Whatever it might be. So the point is to get them to agree on common sense. All right, now, let's go rap. Now what we mean by that, very simple. What you are calling people to, this is what you're calling people to. La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. Very, very simple, okay? I mean, people thought of da'wah training and how are you going to, this is what you're calling people to. This is what you know, and it's that simple. Now there are different ways of expressing that, and how you express it is up to you. Okay, I can give you some of the ways that I express it, but how you express it, the point is, you understand, this is kind of how we break it down, we kind of switch them, and then La ilaha illallah, that's the go portion, God's existence and oneness. Rap, revelation and prophethood, that's Muhammad Rasulullah, okay? Now, God's existence, really quick. You go to someone, and let's say you ask them, do you believe, the first point you want to ask, do you believe that God exists? Okay? Now you notice something, that I asked a closed-ended question. I didn't ask, what do you believe? Okay? Because remember, street da'wah, you have to be quick and efficient. You're not gonna, if you ask him, what do you believe, what's gonna happen? Man, you might as well sit down. The guy's like, you know, back in 1975, I had my first experience, I was shaving, and I said, God, is that you? And then all of a sudden, it was like, you know, I said, he touched my heart, and blah, 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 and next thing you know, and then I met this woman, and we married in the church, and blah, blah, and hey, 4 hours later, you're like, dude, I gotta go, man, that one table's over. Right? Right? So you'll be quick and efficient. So I didn't ask him an open-ended question. I asked him, do you believe in God? Close, it's either yes, no, maybe, right? You only got 3 answers, okay? If he says yes, well, you can just move on. And now you go to worshiping Allah alone. All right, so let's break this down. Do you believe in a creator or do you believe in God? Yes. Okay, you move on to worshiping him alone. If he says no, then what? So now I don't believe in a creator. How would you convince the person that there's a creator? Silence. Wow. Nobody has any argument, nothing to say to a person. Just like, oh, you don't believe in a God? Okay, have a nice day. See you later. Right? Yes, sister over there. Why? What? Why not? Okay, well, they say, well, you know, I don't, like, you can't scientifically prove that there's a creator. What's next?
Can't.
You can? Who said that?
No, I said you cannot.
You cannot.
You cannot have creation without a creator. You cannot.
Okay, very good. So the brother said that, okay, well, where did all this stuff come from, right? Listen, remember, we tend to think of atheists that you have to come up with some sort of deep, rational argument because they are very intelligent and super rational and so on and so forth. But in the end, they have the weakest argument possible. And I'll tell you, the proof for that is you go through the Quran, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's giving you arguments for the Christians, He's giving you arguments for the mushrikun, He's giving you arguments, but when it comes to atheists, there's like one ayah in the Quran. أم خلقوا من غير شيء أم هم الخالقون أم خلق السماوات والأرض بل La yuqin. Right? That were they created from nothing, or did they create themselves, or did they create the heavens and the earth? Rather, they're not certain. One ayah. So it just shows that the intellectual weight that Allah gives the atheists is very low. So don't be scared of the atheists. They're not upon anything. So someone else help me out. Okay, so the brother mentioned, like, how do we get here? How did all this come into being? What else? So this, okay, let's say I said, well, science has not proven, science hasn't proven that, has not proven that God exists. So we can't really believe it. What do you go with that?
Has science disproven it?
Has science disproven it?
Yes.
Well, I mean, we don't have any proof for it.
So you don't have any proof against it?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not, I mean, I'd rather go with having proof for something to believe it, right?
You can say, well, it could be, and then you can just lead it with that.
It could be, okay. All right. Yes?
Then where did everything come from? Like, what was the start?
The Big Bang. Just bam, and everything, we got everything here. What do you say to that? He's like the Big Bang. Just
what caused the Big Bang?
Well, it just caused itself.
Who made the Big Bang?
Well, nobody made the Big Bang, just bang. Listen, you guys are laughing, but really I'm telling you, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, right, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ, that were they created from nothing, this is really the answer they have. They're like, yes, we were created from nothing. It sounds ridiculous, right? That you can get something from nothing, okay? It sounds ridiculous. I cannot get this bottle out of nothing. It just sounds ridiculous. But that's what they end up, that's the only position they have. Either they say they were created from nothing, or they brought themselves into existence, which no one really says. So really it comes down to that, okay? So, continue on. Okay, science hasn't proven it, now what? Where do you go from there? Real quick, move quick, because I need to get to the next slide.
That science.
What's that?
There's many things in the Quran.
Okay.
Science has, which were written in the Quran 1,400 years ago.
Okay, hold on, I'm going to stop you there.
And science is only getting around to discovering them now.
Okay, so hold off on that. That brings up a point I want to make. And this is not for this class, this is for the Eternal Challenge. Okay, we talk about this in the Eternal Challenge. A lot of people will use the scientific miracles in the Quran argument. Believe me when I tell you, it is terrible. Okay? It's terrible because once you understand the philosophy of science, you understand that science is mutable. And if you say that today we know this in science, you're putting science at this position and using it to prove the Quran. But the Quran is absolute and science is what is mutable. Okay? Now I don't have time to get into the details, but I'm just saying.
I was actually saying the other way around. The Quran
is proving science?
Not proving science. The Quran is giving us the science, and the science is just getting around to discovering it now.
Got it. Okay. So what I'm saying is the whole science Quran thing. Again, that's a different class. We get into a lot of detail related to the philosophy of science and why it is extremely dangerous to say that there are scientific miracles in the Quran. It's dangerous because science is not stationary, all right? It is mutable. Things that you discovered today, tomorrow you have some new tools, some new observation that you see, and all of a sudden the entire paradigm has changed. And what happens is that miracle that we initially claimed. But then you still have to defend it. That's the problem, right? And a lot of our young people, they fell into this trap, right? So they go to the geology professor would come to them and say, okay, well, your Quran says, وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا, that the mountains are like pegs. And we, in our research, show like tectonic plates and so on and so forth, so your book is wrong. Now this young person totally like, oh my God, this is... And a lot of them leave Islam, unfortunately. So I'm saying, trust me on it. We can do the Eternal Challenge, the class, we go to details, and so on and so forth. But trust me on it, don't use it as an argument. Just trust me on that, okay? And you can talk to me later after the break or whatever, or after we finish. But trust me on that. Okay, what else? Really quick. So, number one, we mentioned the ayah, were they created from nothing? Or did they create themselves? Or did they create the heavens and the earth? Did you get here from nothing? Yes?
A lot of things are not scientifically proven already.
Very good. A lot of things you know are not scientifically proven, right? Can science prove science? Can science, like if science is the only way to truth, then you need science to prove science. But that's a contradiction, right? So, excellent point the sister made. There's a lot of things you know that have nothing to do with science. Like if I asked one of you, I said, okay, did your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother exist?
Yeah.
Did she?
Yeah.
Yes. How do you scientifically prove that? You don't. You're here and that's what proves it, right? Otherwise you wouldn't be here. But you didn't go into a lab and do an empirical experiment to show that indeed your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother exists, right? The whole point is your presence, you know that she exists, okay? So science is not the only way to truth, and we talk about that in the Eternal Challenge. That's a very good point, okay? Your tool is not only science, okay? All right, so were they created from nothing? Did they create themselves? Did they come from the earth? All right, other ways to do this, the building in the desert, the watch in the woods, did they come from nothing? No, obviously not. How did we hear about the Creator? Like people talk about God and Allah, and so many people believe in the Creator. Well, where did that information come from? Right? All right, the fairness, hold on. Fairness and sending of prophets. Who are these people that came with the message? You can talk about the Prophet ﷺ, the truthfulness of his message, and so on and so forth. Well, was he speaking the truth or wasn't he speaking the truth? If he was speaking the truth, well then obviously Allah exists, right? The concept of justice, moral, what's your moral anchor? Like you say, this is correct and this is wrong, but how do you know, right? You have to have a moral anchor to determine something that is objective, that is outside of your limited subjective consciousness. Now I'm getting an eternal challenge, so I need to stop. All right, he authored a book. The Quran is another way. You can present them with the Quran, have them go through it, ask them to be sincere, and that Islam is one of the fastest growing religions. Okay, another one, the design in the universe. Look around you. And this is the part that hits the fitrah. It's very deep, right? When people go outside and start reflecting upon things, this hits them at a place which is much deeper than just the rationale. Okay? So reflecting upon the creation of the heavens and the earth, so you can say things like the sun's distance from the earth, the size of the sun, the earth, and yada, yada, yada. Okay, so that's that. Now, let's say the guy says, yes, I believe in God. Okay, well, if you believe in God, then you want to move to worship now. Okay? Someone defined for me, actually, hold on, before I do that, I just gave it away. Someone defined for me what is worship. What is ibadah? A definition. Like you're calling them to worship Allah alone. Well, what do we mean by worship?
Well, he asked us, how he asked us to worship.
How he asked us to worship. Okay, what do we mean by the word worship? Yes.
To recognize Allah, praise Allah.
To recognize Allah, to praise Allah. Anybody else? Sisters. To submit. Anything that pleases Allah. Anything else? To thank Allah. Okay, anyone else? To obey Allah. Okay, that's close to submission. Okay. So you get the idea that worship has to do with what? Sorry? Actions, knowledge, all those come under the rubric of worship. But we want a nice definition that we can go forward with. Now again, this section is how you present it. It's up to you. But I can tell you how sometimes I'll present it. Like for instance, the definition of worship that Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah gives. He says that worship is the highest point of submission with the highest point of love. This is ibadah, right? Ghayatul muhabba is the highest, the apex of love, and it's the apex of submission. Why? Because you could love something, someone, but you don't submit to them. So for the fathers in the audience, you might have children, and they're always on your case about getting you Skittles and blah 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 blah, and you don't always submit to them, but you love them, right? That's not ibadah. Similarly, you could be under like a tyrannical rule, right? Donald Trump. Anyways, so you submit to that, but you don't love the tyrant, right? That is also not worship. It's only when they're both coupled together. Love, the highest level of love with the highest level of submission. This is what we mean by ibadah. And so when you come to someone and you say, okay, you believe in God. Okay, do you love God? Because He gave you all of these things. He gave you the ability to breathe and eat and function. Shouldn't you love God? Well, yes, I should love God. Okay, doesn't God know everything? Isn't His knowledge greater than yours? Yes. So shouldn't you submit to that which has more knowledge than you? Yes. Well, that's what we mean by worship. That you love that Creator that you say that you believe in, and that you accept that He has knowledge, and His knowledge is going to be greater than yours because He created you, right? And created everything around you in the universe. So you submit to that which is more knowledgeable. Yes?
But then if for a child, if they love their parents and they submit to their parents, not worshiping their parents, that's just...
Very interesting. You know the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam? Remember when he looked at the stars and the moon and so on and so forth? If you think about it, that child that's growing up, it's one of the things it thinks about, right? That it should be grateful to their parents, right? And the issue is the idea of gratitude is part of us. Now, this is another way you could talk about Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, this area where we're worshiping Allah alone. Gratitude is a natural characteristic. So when a child is growing up, it's grateful to its parents, no doubt, right? But as it grows up, it starts to think like, wait a minute, but my parents are dependent upon other things, the economy, their job, and so on and so forth. So then they think, okay, they should be grateful to the government, let's say. But then they say, wait a minute, the government also, it's dependent upon, agriculture or whatever. Then, okay, we should be, then maybe we should be grateful to the sun. But wait a minute, the sun also has a creator. So eventually that gratitude has to translate to Allah Azza wa Jalla. But the problem is, when we think of gratitude, like if I give you some water and you take it, you're gonna say something. What will you say?
Thank you.
Yeah? I hope you say thank you or JazakaAllah Khair or some shukriya or something, right? I would hope. Okay? That's natural inside of you. Now, someone does you a favor, you can return the favor, right? Someone gives you some money, you can return the money. No problem, right? But what about something that's beyond returning the favor? The sun, you can't return the favor. The sun, that translates into ibadah. And eventually that ibadah, when that child starts to grow up and they're upon the fitrah, they would eventually worship Allah. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So, my point is that one angle you can use is to talk about knowledge of Allah, right? And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has power, therefore He's responsible for everything that you have, and that should mean that you love Allah, and knowledge of Allah, which is more than yours, therefore you'd submit to Him. Okay? Now this is one way of explaining Tawheed. Another way is what I just mentioned in terms of gratitude, right? That if God created you, shouldn't you be grateful? And how are you going to be grateful to the Creator? Well, you're going to be grateful by worshiping the Creator, right? That's all within the fitrah. And remember, you want to get to a yes. Do you agree with that? Do you think that's right? Do you think that's appropriate? You always want to get to a yes, okay? However you want to express it, again, however you understand Tawheed, express it and go for it, all right? All right. So, one area we need to cover a bit quickly. What's going to go antagonist to Tawheed? You might be someone that's upon the Trinity, and they say, well, the Trinity. So, how do we deal with that? Okay? Someone help me out. Sisters. Someone comes to you and says, you know what, that's great. You should worship God, but I believe in Jesus, and He's the Son, the Father, and the Holy Ghost, and these three are one. Now what? What do you tell us, sister? Yes?
I would ask if you believe that Jesus died for the sins.
Okay.
Did He die? Did He come back?
Okay. Ask him to think about, was he dead in those 3 days? And if he was dead, then...
Yeah. Anything that is created or died does not really, cannot be God.
But what if he comes back, or she comes back to you and says, but you see, the Bible says that I am the way and the light, and the only way to God is through me. And so therefore, you see here, he's saying such and such. What do you do then? Sister, I'm still on you. I'm still yes.
I'm thinking.
Oh, you're thinking? Okay. All right. Bismillah. So you want to know what I tell you?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I advise people is don't, and I talked to some of the brothers earlier when they came up and asked me this, don't get into a debate on the Bible. Don't get into it. You're opening a can of worms. And even if you win that debate, what are you telling the person? I know more about your book than you know about them. What are you doing? You're degrading them. Remember, we're trying to win the hearts, not the intellect. So when they say the Bible, immediately you can just say, well, the thing is, I'm not really familiar with the Bible. I don't really know. That's separate. But I'm saying just on principle, which one makes more sense? God dying, I'm just asking, how is that even possible? I don't know about the Bible. I mean, that's a separate issue. But how? Like, how does that work? Do you get what I'm saying? So don't get into a biblical argument. Like, a lot of people like to do that, and maybe your background, you have some background, you were a Christian before and you have some knowledge of the Bible, and if you can use it in a smart and intelligent way, fine. But don't get stuck on it, because you're gonna open a can of worms that really you're not gonna have a hard time closing. Yes?
I don't think it's your way to ask, but if the person says it's a mystery, it's a mystery, like a lot of times Christians say that it's a mystery.
It's a mystery. And then you go back to your first point, you said, remember we agreed on common sense? That's what we're going to use. That's why we agree on it. Because we start off, we say, okay, wait a minute, but we agree that what we're going to move forward with is common sense. Yeah.
So they can come back at you and say it's a matter of faith. Just like we have a matter of faith. In our creed, believing in Allah, we believe, that He exists as a matter of faith.
Okay.
And they are saying that Trinity to them is a matter of faith as well.
Okay. So what you might want to tell them is that, look, is this faith something that would be natural? Like if you went to a child, right, and you said, look, you have the concept of Tawheed, and you present it to a child, right? Ask them, don't tell me which is correct or what you believe, but ask me what you think the child would understand easier. Tawheed, what you just explained to them, worshipping Allah alone, so on and so forth, or that God is 3 and 1 at the same time. Which one? I'm not asking what you believe, I'm asking what do you think the child will understand easier? What comes naturally? So if you're saying naturally, okay, fine. But let's look at it in that perspective, right? And if they're honest, they'll tell you that this concept is not something that, 1 + 1 + 1 is equal to 1. I mean, it doesn't have much in terms of rational weight. So you go by that angle, inshallah. Okay. So aside from the slide, what if they say something like, don't you guys believe that God can do anything? Do we believe God can do anything?
Yes.
Yes. So can't He have a son? No. What now?
No.
No. Okay, but you just said He can do anything. No. Who said the no? You said no? Okay, but He can do anything.
Yeah.
But He can't have a son.
No.
But that's part of anything.
No.
See, the thing is, the brother, mashallah, he's just like, whatever.
No, I mean, if you start asking a question, like, you don't know what you say, so I'm going to give you the same answer, no?
It's like, you don't know what you're talking about, well, I'm going to give you the same answer. All right. Well, let's say they're serious. They're like, you know what? If you believe God can do anything, can't God have a son? Let me hear from the sisters. They're not going to just be like, no. Right? So what do you say? What do you say to this person?
Well, God explicitly said that He Himself, there is no son, there is no association with Him.
Said where? Because I've read the Bible back and forth and I don't see that.
Well,
Yes?
It says that God is not in a body form.
He's not. But if He wants to be, can He?
God doesn't need it. Yeah. God
No, but if He wants to. I didn't say He needs it. I'm saying if He wants to.
Well, it's not about what He.
It's not about what He wants.
No. It's about what He wants, but He's not going to come down to a human level because human beings are more restricted.
So you're saying He can't?
No.
All right. You guys want this? You guys want? Okay. Yes. Go ahead, sister. Sorry. Why would He want to? I'm just saying, if He wanted to, could He or couldn't He? That's all I'm asking. Whether He wants to or not, that's not the point. The point is, can He?
If He wants to, yes, He can.
Yes, He can. Okay.
If He wants to, but He's capable.
Okay. فَعَالٌ لِمَا يُرِيدُ. Okay. Yes.
to be a son or a daughter, this is a human being. He wants to be a one. He doesn't need anything.
Sure.
He wants a son and a daughter.
Sure.
These are the human weaknesses that you need someone.
Okay. So but if He wants it, can He do it?
If Allah wants something,
Then He can have a son. Okay. All right, let's go and crack this nut, because I think this is an interesting one. I've gotten this a few times, and Muslims usually say, but it's beneath His majesty, and so on and so forth. So, yes?
Because if we say that God wants a son, we cannot say that God.
You cannot say, so God can't do everything.
You are right, God can do it, but God can do it.
Okay, let's crack this nut, okay? Now, the issue is that what this is what we call wordplay. It's semantics. Now, why do I say that? Okay. The point is that sometimes people conflate two words, and that word is impossible and difficult. Sometimes in our parlance, in our language, we'll see something and we'll say, oh man, that was impossible, right? Like some baby stuck under a car and some mother would come up like, boom, a journalist rushing and she lifts the car. Like, yo, that was impossible. But actually it wasn't impossible. It was extremely difficult. Because the definition of the word impossible is something that is not possible. Meaning, this bunch of words that you've strung together and they don't mean anything. So if I say a square circle, Can someone give me a square circle? No, that's impossible because that's just words that you flung together. Square, something has 4 sides. Circle is something that's round. Now you just flung them together and said, okay, doesn't mean anything. So that's what's impossible. And what we say is that Allah doesn't do the impossible because they're just words that are coming out of your mouth that have no meaning. Okay? So when you say God had a son, the characteristic of a son is like the father. The son of a cow is a cow. The son of a human is a human. The son of God would be God. Okay, but there's a problem with that. What's the problem? God doesn't have a beginning, but the son had a beginning. So he has no beginning and a beginning at the same time. Those are just words that you're putting together. God is perfect, but the human being is imperfect. So can something be perfect and imperfect at the same time? Again, it's just words that you're throwing together. So when you say, can God do anything, anything that is possible, not just words that you've strung together. Do you understand the point? Yes, everyone with me, or just we're like, whoa, that was deep. All right, well, it's not really that deep. Okay? So when they say something like that to you, that's basically where we want to take them. That these are just words that you're just stringing together and asking God to do it. But God doesn't do that. Yes, it's true. فَعَالٌ لِمَا يُرِيدُ. Allah does what He wants. Right? But the point is, those are just words that you've thrown together that have no meaning. It has to mean something. Right? Okay, moving on. All right, so... Yes?
The second one.
Second one, how many gods were there when Jesus died for 3 days? There's another argument you could come if they say that. Again, they may say something like, well, there were 3 gods. Or there were 3 in 1. Okay, but He died, but there's still 3. Okay, well, He was resurrected. Okay, there's still 3. Okay, well, how are there always 3 and yet 1 at the same time? So again, they're going to be going in circles.
Well, what they say is I've heard this from them. They say
sure.
I'm not, this doesn't make any sense. I'm just telling you. And
you don't say.
You may have heard it. They say this Trinity concept is the human aspect and the God aspect. So the human aspect died, but the God aspect didn't die.
Right. But you see, the problem is that in their theology, they can't just have a human sacrifice for the sins of all of humanity. The God portion has to die, otherwise it's just one human dying. So by necessity, God has to die, right? But they can't accept it. So then they come up with something more ridiculous. Say the God-man died. Well, what's a God-man? Well, okay, your guess is as good as mine, right? So it's just, like you said, it doesn't really make any sense. All right, moving on. There's other arguments. Why is it never expressly mentioned in the Bible? Now, technically, like I said, try to stay away from biblical arguments, right? If you have some knowledge and they're pushing you towards the Bible, just say, look, there's nothing explicit in the Bible that said, where Jesus says, worship me, or that I'm God, okay? But I caution you with that. Don't get into biblical arguments in general. All right, now these things, we're out of time, so I'm not going to get into them, but sometimes Christians come to you with like the egg. The Trinity is like the egg, the shell, the yolk, the white. 3 things, 1 egg, right? So how would you answer that? Real quick.
Oh, one cell.
The Trinity. It's like an egg. So what?
1 cell.
What's that?
God is not egg.
1 cell. Well, what do you mean?
The egg is a cell, 1 cell.
1 cell, okay. But I'm saying simple. Make it simple. Make it easy. Like when you crack open the egg and you see the yellow portion, do you say, oh, egg? What do you say? Yolk, right? When you see the white, well, what do you say? Egg whites, right? I need that for for protein or whatever, right? And when you see the shell, you don't see the shell and say, oh, that's a complete no. So there's 3 separate parts, and they're each called 3 different things. So you can't say that they're all one. So even the egg breaks down. Do you understand? They're trying to say there's 3 things in one, but each one of them are separate parts. And the same thing with the flame. They say they have the heat, the fire, and whatever else it is, and these 3 are one. Okay? Again, you can all break them down. I'm out of time. Let me just get to the last part, and that was the wrap. Revelation and prophethood, because we're out of time. Real quick, let's say they agree with you that indeed Allah alone is worthy of worship. How do you go from there to prophethood? The simple way is to ask them, look, is it logically possible that Allah would send prophets? Because if we have to submit to Him, we have to have a way to know what He wants. So is it logically possible, notice what I said, logically possible that God would send prophets and messengers?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. JazakaAllah Khair.
Short time.
Right. Shorten the time. So the point is that if you say logically possible, they're not going to say no, right? It's logically possible. And the bridge, okay, then you can say, and is it logically possible that Allah would send a man named Muhammad ﷺ who has these qualities, and you can mention some qualities, is it logically possible that Allah would send someone like that? Notice I said logically possible.
Yes,
Again, that's the key word. And so no one's going to be like, no, that's logically impossible. It can never happen. No, they'll be like, yeah, it's logically possible. Okay? From there, this might surprise you, you can be like, well, if that's true, you believe that God exists, you believe that He alone is worthy of worship, you just said that it is, that this idea of prophets, then what you're saying is the Shahada. Okay? Now some people might say, well, wait a minute, you only asked him if it's logically possible. But realistically, the bridge between logically possible and what you believe is much shorter than you think. If you think it's logically possible, you're already there pretty much. Okay? And we've had that experience. So you may say, okay, well, so you go from there and you say, if that's the case, I urge you to become Muslim. Remember, go for the gold, take the Shahada. Now, we're kind of out of time, otherwise we're going to get into certain proofs of prophethood and so on and so forth. If you guys want to know about that, then if you guys show up tomorrow at the street dawah, then you can pull me aside and we can go through that, right? Or maybe we can have a session 2 at some point later on. Alhamdulillah, I moved close to this area, so I'm here, inshallah. You can pull me. Actually, don't do that, because then my wife gets really mad. She's like, why do you take 4 hours for salah? So don't do that. But anyways, but you can catch me here and there, inshallah. So let's go ahead and conclude here. Just as a reminder, tomorrow, inshallah, we'll be doing some street dawah at Herman Park, 11 a.m., but that is contingent upon the weather. It depends on the weather. So if you're interested, make sure you register with the brothers outside so we can send you an email in case we're not going to be there. Because in case it's raining, we're not going to go, right? Very simple. So make sure you register. Also, if you want the notes to the entire 5-hour course, make sure you give me your email so that we can send those out to you. If you've already registered, you've already got the notes because we sent out earlier today. If you want the notes to the entire 5-hour joint, make sure you register, okay? And last but not, yes, real quick.
When you say street dawah, suppose you have a whole bunch of people come in. So you divide the people in 2 groups, everywhere in the park, separate, or is there just a one place?
When they come, I basically, I give them I tell them basically, you pick your partner, and some of them pick their partner, some of them begrudgingly pick someone else, but the point is they pick someone and they go off in 2s. Yep.
They're not in one around the table?
Nope, that goes back to my rule. We're not all going to crowd around someone, so on and so forth.
So about the group comes one side?
The group comes there and then we divide them up into 2s. You 2 go over there, 2 go over there, 2 go over there.
But they come to you, standing, and come 5, 6 people, you come at the same time. Like
a group of non-Muslims.
A group of non-Muslims?
Yes.
Okay, so that's where your partner comes in. You go, go get the rest of the guys. Right? Because you want to divide them up. You don't want to... See, speaking to a group is very challenging. Exactly. Because you'll make a point, someone else make another point, third person make another point. Exactly. And so you won't make progress. So that's where your partner comes in. You tell them, go get the rest of the group. Go get 3, 4 more brothers. So then you can go and split them up. So anyways, I was trying to conclude because I went like 20 minutes over time and we're going to get in trouble for that. Yeah, I know, I'm going to have to. So, as I mentioned, sign up for the street dawah. One last thing. Mus'ab mentioned the billboards. Okay? Now, the billboards, they're there and they're attracting a lot of people. People are driving by. Is life just a game? They have a phone number. They have a website. They have an amazing impact. When you see it, you're just like, oh wow, right? But the thing is, these type of projects, they need help, right? They need funding. So if you can, whatever you can, try to support them in this billboard project so that they can put up more billboards and extend the time for these billboards or whatever it might be. So think about that, and if you can, I think it's iknahouston.org. Is that what it is? iknahouston.org. So try to give something so that we can kind of continue these projects. Bismillah.
Everybody's answering these questions. So we have the phone number. 877.
Yes.
Do you think there are operators that answer these? Or
yes, these all come straight to my cell phone. No, I'm just kidding. No. We have I believe ICNA has a group in New Jersey, and they have operators there. Is that correct, guys? Yes. A full. That's what they do. They just 24 hours. That's what they're doing, right? So, yes.
So if they accept it, so what is next? Do I have to change my name?
So what if they accept Islam? Now this is a very good question which we can get into. If they accept Islam tomorrow, then just bring them to me. Okay? Because I can't get into like new Muslims and so on and so forth. That's another course in and of itself. Right? So if they accept Islam, if you're alone and they accept Islam, you're like, okay, give me your number, and you do follow up with them. Now follow-up is infinitely more difficult than giving them a shahada.
Exactly. Yeah.
Infinitely more, I'm telling you, because follow-up takes, you call them, you go to them, you bring them to the masjid, you teach them, it's a lot of work, right? So if you think the da'wah is hard, the da'wah is very easy. Giving someone a shahada is very easy, but the real work starts after they become Muslim.
No, if they ask, what do I have to do if I accept? They're not accepting it, but they are asking you, you have to change my name, they have to tell everyone
No.
I'm Muslim.
Look, man, like you don't have to do any of that. We're not going to take you to the river and dump you down. Nothing like that, right? Statement on the town that you become Muslim, and after that, then you can tell them the 5 pillars. Very simple, right? The 5 pillars take like 30 seconds, 50 seconds. You can just take them to the 5 pillars. These are the fundamentals of religion. This is what you're obligatory. This is what you're obligated towards, right? And after that, you keep on building your spiritual connection with Allah, and you can do more and more. Khalas, right? Again, we ran short of time. We talked a lot about this in the original course, so I apologize for that. Maybe we can actually have it back for part 2 or something, and we'll see. But we really need to conclude, otherwise I really will have to end up paying money, as brother mentioned. So let's go ahead and stop here. JazakaAllah Khair. Any sort of good that came was all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any sort of mistakes were all from myself or from shaitan. I appreciate you standing or sitting and being patient with me. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. I hope to see you guys out tomorrow, brothers and sisters, coming out and kind of putting into practice what you've learned. JazakaAllah Khair. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.